Hey there, story lovers. This is Harryverse X, and we're bringing you an epic adventure. What if Wolverine and Deadpool found Harry in cupboard and gave him adamantium wand with healing factor magic? Hit like, subscribe, and let's begin this journey. Chapter 1, The Cupboard and the Claws. The signal had been bouncing off HYDRA's old European relay grid for 3 weeks before Logan picked it up through one of Nick Fury's less official back channels, the kind that Fury maintained specifically so he could deny knowing about them if anyone asked. It read like a suppression field. The kind HYDRA used to dampen mutant signatures in populated areas, keep their assets quiet, keep their test subjects from screaming too loud on the psychic frequencies that certain very irritating telepaths like to monitor. Logan had wanted to go alone. That was, of course, why Wade was currently riding shotgun in a stolen Range Rover doing 90 down the M3, eating chimichangas from a foil-wrapped stack he'd somehow produced from inside his tactical vest, and providing a running commentary on English hedgerows. "They're so neat," Wade said, gesturing at the passing countryside with a chimichanga. "Who trims these? Is there a hedgerow union? Do they have dental? I feel like the hedgerow guys definitely have dental." "Eat your food." "I am eating my food, that's literally what I'm doing right now, Logan, keep up." Wade took an enormous bite and chewed thoughtfully. "Hey, what if it's not HYDRA? What if it's like, a wizard?" Logan's jaw tightened. "It's not a wizard. You don't know that. There are no wizards." "There are definitely wizards." Wade crumpled the foil and stuffed it back into his vest. "I've been saying this for years. The whole magical hidden society thing. You ever wonder why certain people just vanish from records? Poof. Gone. No paper trail, no death certificate, nothing. Wizards, Logan. Wizards doing wizard stuff. You also think the moon landing was faked by sentient raccoons?" "I said assisted by raccoons, get it right, there's an important distinction," the GPS chimed. Logan took the exit toward Little Whinging without slowing down, and the Range Rover's tires complained loudly about the roundabout. The neighborhood was exactly what Logan expected from a HYDRA suppression signal in the English suburbs, completely, aggressively normal. Privet Drive looked like someone had taken the concept of ordinary and rendered it in 3 dimensions. Every lawn was identical. Every car was washed. Every curtain twitched at exactly the same angle as they drove past, which Logan clocked without turning his head. "This place gives me hives," Wade said. Logan parked 2 streets over. They walked. He'd been tracking the signal on a modified Stark-adjacent scanner, heavily modified, because Stark's tech was irritatingly proprietary and Logan had spent an enjoyable weekend pulling it apart and rebuilding it to actually work, and as they turned onto Privet Drive, the reading spiked. Not HYDRA tech. He'd known that 2 streets back, if he was being honest with himself. The frequency was wrong. Too organic. Too layered. It felt like something alive, pressed down very hard. Number 4 was a house like all the other houses. Logan stopped on the pavement outside it, and the scanner went absolutely haywire, and he stood there for a moment with the numbers climbing off the chart, and something in his chest did something he didn't have a name for. "That's not a suppression field," he said. Wade had gone quiet. That alone was alarming. Wade was never quiet. "No," Wade agreed. "That's a kid." Logan's nostrils flared. Beyond the roses and the fresh paint and the aggressively normal smell of English suburbia, there was the scent of something small and frightened, pressed into a space too small for it, and underneath that, underneath everything, the faintest copper thread of old blood and the specific sharp sour smell of a body that hadn't been eating enough. He was through the garden gate before he'd consciously decided to move. Wade caught his arm. Logan turned and looked at him, and Wade, for once, held his gaze without a joke. "Easy," Wade said quietly. "We don't know what we're walking into. If there's a kid in there, we do this right." Logan breathed through his nose once, slowly. The anger was already there, had been there since the smell hit him, a cold, specific fury that he'd learned over a century and a half to keep on a very short leash, because when it got loose, things didn't survive. He pulled it back. Locked it down. Left enough of it in his eyes to communicate clearly to any adult who opened that door what kind of conversation they were about to have. He rang the doorbell. The woman who opened the door was thin-necked and horse-faced with an expression that said she'd been born disapproving and had spent every year since perfecting it. She looked at Logan, the flannel shirt, the built-like-a-brick-wall physicality, the sideburns, and her lip curled. "Whatever you're selling, we're not selling anything," Logan said. Petunia Dursley's gaze moved to Wade, who was standing behind Logan in his full red and black suit because he'd decided, at the last minute, that he didn't want to change out of it, and she made a sound like a cat encountering something distasteful. "If this is some sort of joke, it's not a joke." Logan's voice was very calm. It was the calm of a man choosing, very deliberately, to be calm. "We're looking for a child. Small. Dark hair. Living in this house." Something moved across Petunia Dursley's face. Something quick and complicated and ultimately landing on indignant. "I don't know what you, lady," Logan said, "I can smell him." The silence stretched. From somewhere inside the house came the sound of television, a sports broadcast, loud, accompanied by the heavy thud of someone large shifting their weight on a piece of furniture. Petunia stood frozen in the doorway, and Logan watched her calculate, watched her try to find the angle where this ended with her being fine, and watched her fail to find it. "He's my nephew," she said finally. "He's perfectly, where is he?" Logan said. "I don't have to tell you, where is he?" He hadn't raised his voice. That was important. He hadn't moved. He was standing on the front step with his arms at his sides, and the rage was entirely in his eyes, and Petunia Dursley, whatever her many failings, was not a stupid woman. She took a step back. "The cupboard," she said, in a voice so small it barely qualified as a sound. "Under the stairs." Logan walked past her into the house. The hallway was neat and smelled of furniture polish and something floral and artificial. Family photos on the wall, a boy with a face like a small, angry pork chop at various ages, growing progressively larger and redder. A man shaped like a beach ball wedged into a suit. The woman at the door, younger, smiling tightly at the camera. No photos with a second child. The cupboard was at the base of the staircase, a small door set into the wall with a latch on the outside. Logan looked at the latch. He looked at the door. He looked at the latch again, and the cold fury in his chest crystallized into something permanent and diamond-hard. He heard the television cut off. Heavy footsteps. "What the bloody hell is going on in?" Vernon Dursley stopped in the hallway entrance and took in Logan with the expression of a man who'd expected to be large enough to intimidate someone and had just realized he'd miscalculated. "Sit down," Wade said pleasantly, appearing from the front door behind Vernon and gesturing at the living room. "We're going to have a little chat in a minute." But first, Logan crouched in front of the cupboard door and spoke to it directly. "Hey, kid." Silence. Then a very small, very controlled sound of movement, like someone trying not to make any sound at all, which was somehow worse than crying would have been. "My name's Logan. I'm not with these people. I'm not going to hurt you." He paused. Tried to think of what to say next, came up mostly empty, and went with the truth. "I'm going to open this door." "Okay." A long pause. Then, very quietly, from the other side, "Okay." He slid the latch and opened the door. The cupboard was small enough that a grown adult couldn't have stood in it. There was a cot in there, a child's cot, crammed into the space, and a single bare bulb with a pull string, and a shelf with a broken toy on it, and a child sitting on the cot with his knees pulled to his chest, watching the door open with eyes that were too old for his face and too large for his glasses. The glasses were held together with tape. The boy was 8 years old, maybe. Small for 8, though Logan suspected that was circumstantial rather than genetic. Dark hair that went everywhere. A bruise on his left forearm that was 3 days old and shaped like fingers. The magical energy the scanner had been screaming about was rolling off him in waves that Logan could feel at the back of his teeth, enormous and layered and completely, cruelly suppressed, like someone had found a river and dropped a mountain on top of it. The boy looked at Logan. Logan looked at the boy. "Hi," said the boy, with the careful, watchful neutrality of a child who had learned not to expect much from adults. "Hi," said Logan. Behind him, in the hallway, he heard Wade say something sharp and no longer entirely joking, and Vernon Dursley's bluster collapse into something more genuine and afraid, and the sound of Petunia beginning to cry. None of that mattered right now. "You hungry?" Logan asked. The boy stared at him. "Yes." "Okay." Logan stood up. "Come on out of there." The boy unfolded himself from the cot and stood up, and he was even smaller standing than he'd been sitting, and he stepped out of the cupboard into the hallway and looked up at Logan with those 2 old eyes and said, very quietly, "Are you taking me away?" Logan crouched down to eye level. "Yeah," he said. "I am." Something happened in the boy's face. It wasn't relief, not yet. It was more like the very first, infinitesimally small crack in a wall that had been built very thick, very fast, by a child who'd had no other options. "My name's Harry," the boy said. "I know," Logan said. He didn't, actually. But it felt like the right thing to say. He put one hand on Harry's shoulder, gently, telegraphing the movement first, watching the boy's reaction and adjusting when he caught the flinch, and walked him into the hallway toward the front door. Vernon Dursley was in the living room doorway now, face the color of old port, working himself up toward something. Wade was leaning against the wall beside him with his arms crossed, and Logan noted with appreciation that Wade had positioned himself in such a way that Vernon would have to physically go through him to go anywhere. "Now see here," Vernon started, his voice finding some of its old bluster, "you can't just walk into a man's home and take he's not yours," Logan said. Vernon's face went puce. "He's my wife's nephew, which makes him our legal, Vernon." Logan stopped. He looked at Vernon Dursley with all the patience he'd accumulated in 180 years of watching human beings find new ways to be terrible to each other, and he said, very quietly, "I'm going to say something to you, and I want you to hear it clearly." He set Harry slightly behind him. Then he looked at Vernon. "Don't," he said. That was all. 1 word. 3 letters. Said without heat, without theater, in the voice of someone who had made this kind of statement before and had never, not once, needed to repeat it. Vernon Dursley's mouth closed. The bluster deflated. Something genuine and animal looked out of his small eyes for a moment and then looked away. Logan turned, put his hand back on Harry's shoulder, and walked them both to the door. "Wait," Petunia said, from somewhere behind them. Her voice was strange, not commanding, not wheedling. Something more complicated than either. Logan stopped without turning. She stopped. Started again. "There's a letter. From when they left him. It's in the kitchen drawer." Logan turned and looked at her. Petunia Dursley was standing against the wall with her arms wrapped around herself, and she looked frightened and diminished and, for just a moment, like someone who'd spent a long time making a choice and had just, finally, realized she'd made the wrong one. "It explains things," she said. "About him. What he is." "I know what he is," Logan said. But he waited while she went to the kitchen, and when she came back she was holding a letter, cream-colored, thick stock, sealed with red wax and cracked from years of the drawer holding it shut, and she held it out at arm's length like she couldn't quite make herself hand it over and couldn't quite make herself put it back. Harry reached up and took it himself. Petunia made a sound. Logan didn't look at her face. He didn't need to, and looking wouldn't help either of them. They left Number 4 Privet Drive at 11:40 in the morning. Harry walked between Logan and Wade. Wade had materialized smoothly at the garden gate, falling into step on Harry's right side with a natural easiness that Logan respected, and he walked with the very careful steps of someone expecting the ground to shift under them. He didn't look back. Logan did. Old habit. He looked back at the house and at the woman standing in the open doorway watching them go, and he read in her posture something that might have been guilt if she'd had more practice with it, and he filed it away in the part of his mind that held the things he didn't fully understand yet, and turned back to the road. "So," Wade said, after about a block of companionable walking silence. "Harry." "Yeah," said Harry. "I'm Wade." "That," he pointed at Logan. "Is Logan. You like chimichangas?" Harry looked up at him. "What's a chimichanga?" Wade stopped walking. He put both hands over his heart. He looked at Logan with an expression of dramatic devastation. "Logan. Logan, this child has never had a chimichanga." "I'm aware. This is a crime." Wade crouched down to Harry's eye level. "We are going to fix this. This is the first thing we fix. Right now. Before anything else. There are things in this world that are unfair and terrible and it is not your fault and you cannot help them, and then there are things that can simply be addressed, and your lack of chimichanga experience is the second kind of thing." He stood back up. "Is there a Tex-Mex place near here or are we going to have to drive back through this nightmare town?" "I don't know," Harry said, slowly, like he was testing whether this conversation was real. "I haven't been. I don't really go places." "Right," Wade said, in a voice that was perfectly neutral and utterly furious in a way only Logan caught, because he'd used that same voice himself, standing in the hallway 2 minutes ago. "Well. That's also going on the list of things we're fixing." They reached the Range Rover. Logan opened the back door and Harry stood looking at it for a moment, the leather seats, the space, the sheer difference of it from the cupboard, and then climbed in with great care, like someone being given something they were afraid to want in case it was taken away. Logan got in the front. Started the engine. "Put your seatbelt on," he said. Harry's hands fumbled with the mechanism, and Logan watched him in the rearview mirror struggling with it silently, too proud or too cautious to ask for help, and then, there it was, the click, and Harry sat back with the very careful non-expression of a child who'd just accomplished something independently and was trying not to show how much that mattered. "Hey, Logan," Wade said, rummaging in his vest. "What?" "First stop for chimichangas, then we talk about the whole suppression field over a magical child thing, yes? I feel like that conversation goes better with food. There's nowhere to get chimichangas in Surrey." "Strongly disagree." "Based on what?" "Based on the fact that I refuse to accept a world where that's true." In the back seat, Harry Potter, age 8, still holding his unopened letter, made a very small sound. It took Logan a moment to recognize it. The kid was almost laughing. They found a harvester on the edge of town, which was not a chimichanga in any meaningful sense, but Wade declared it adjacent enough and ordered Harry what appeared to be the entire left half of the menu and watched with unnerving focus as Harry ate. Not the picking at food eating of a child without appetite, but the focused, methodical eating of someone who'd learned that food was not guaranteed and was not going to waste any of it. Logan watched this and felt the diamond-hard thing in his chest acquire a sharper edge. Harry ate 2 full plates before he slowed down. Then he sat back and looked at the letter in his hand like he'd almost forgotten it was there. "You can read it," Logan said. Harry turned it over, looking at the wax seal. "Have you ever seen anything like this?" "Wax seal?" "Sure." "No." Harry held it up. The seal had an emblem in it. Logan looked, and his enhanced vision caught it clearly. A crest. A shield divided into 4 sections with various animals. Letters at the bottom he couldn't quite make out from this angle. "This?" "No," Logan said honestly. "I have," Wade said. Both Logan and Harry looked at him. Wade was entirely serious, which was, on his face, a remarkable thing to see. "When I was doing a job in Edinburgh about 6 years ago, I saw 3 people in robes come out of a pub that wasn't in any street directory and disappear into thin air. And one of them dropped a letter. With that seal." He pointed at Harry's envelope. "I've been trying to find that pub ever since." Harry looked at the letter. Then he broke the seal and unfolded it, and Logan watched his face as he read, and watched the reading change it, slowly, incrementally, the too old carefully blank expression shifting through things Logan couldn't fully identify, ending on something that looked like a door opening in a sealed room. "What's it say?" Logan asked. Harry read aloud, haltingly. "Dear Mrs. Dursley. We are entrusting to your care one Harry James Potter, son of James and Lily Potter, who died in service to the safety of our world. Harry is a wizard, the word is underlined, Logan noted, and in time will receive his invitation to Hogwarts School of Witchcraft and Wizardry. In the meantime, the blood protection maintained by your household will keep him safe from those who wish him harm. We ask only that you care for him as your own. With trust and gratitude." Harry stopped. "Albus Dumbledore." He lowered the letter. Logan said nothing. He let the silence hold for a moment, feeling the weight of what the letter was and wasn't, and what it meant that this man, this Dumbledore, had handed a child to people with a latch on the outside of a cupboard door and called it care. "Wizards," Wade said quietly. "Yeah," Logan said. "Called it." Logan looked at Harry. "That mean anything to you? Any of it?" Harry considered the question with the gravity of a child who took questions seriously. "My parents were, I knew they died. But I didn't know they were." He stopped. Tried again. "I make things happen sometimes. When I'm scared. Or angry. Last year a window, there was a snake at the zoo, and my cousin Dudley pushed me, and the glass just," he made a gesture with his hand. "Disappeared." "Yeah," Logan said. "That would be that." Harry looked at him. "You knew? Before we came?" "I knew the signal. Didn't know it was you specifically." Logan leaned forward slightly, arms on the table. "The thing is, kid, I've got something in me that reads energy. Old instinct. What I was reading from your house, it wasn't HYDRA tech. It was you. Something big, pressed way down." Harry absorbed this. "Is that bad?" "Depends on what you do with it." The boy sat for a moment in silence, and Logan could see him turning things over behind those two old eyes, reassessing, recalibrating, the systematic intelligence of a child who'd had to read situations carefully his whole life and who was now bringing that intelligence to bear on a complete revision of his world. "What are you going to do with me?" Harry asked. "Not afraid. Asking for information." Logan looked at Wade. Wade had been sitting unusually quietly through all of this, and now he leaned forward on the table with his elbows and looked at Harry with an expression Logan almost never saw on his face, stripped of performance, stripped of the layers of deflection and comedy that usually ran on top of everything else he thought. "That depends on what you want," Wade said. Harry blinked. "I mean it," Wade said. "You've had about, 8 years of people making decisions about you without talking to you. So I'm talking to you. What do you want?" The question sat there. Harry looked at it like it might bite him. "I don't," he stopped. Started again. "I don't know. I've never," another stop. "Take your time," Wade said. Harry Potter sat in a harvester outside Little Whinging and was quiet for a long moment, and Logan watched something happen in him that Logan recognized, because he'd done something like it himself at various points across a very long and frequently terrible life, the moment when a person stops bracing for the blow that's always been coming and tentatively, carefully, considers the possibility that maybe, this time, it isn't coming. "I want to not go back," Harry said. "Done," Logan said. "And I want," Harry's jaw tightened, and the air around him shimmered very faintly, just for a moment, and Logan felt it in his back teeth, the wash of raw power, enormous and uncontrolled and reaching, like a tide looking for its shore. "I want to learn what I can do." Wade looked at Logan. Logan looked at Wade. "Done," they said together. The drive north took 6 hours. Logan drove. Wade talked, to Harry, mostly, about everything and nothing, and Logan registered with quiet appreciation how Wade handled it, the constant low-level chatter that filled the silence without requiring anything, that made the car feel occupied and alive rather than tense, that gave Harry something to respond to or not as he chose, with no pressure attached. Harry chose to respond. Not much, at first. One-word answers that expanded slowly, over miles, into actual sentences. Wade had a gift, Logan had always known this, beneath everything, for creating space that felt safe without announcing it as such. He didn't ask about the cupboard or the bruise or the years before. He asked about the snake at the zoo, and Harry's eyes lit up when he talked about it, the snake speaking back to him in something he understood, and they talked about snakes for 40 minutes through the Midlands. So it actually talked. Wade said. Well, not in English. But I understood it. Like, Harry searched for words. Like when you hear music and you know what it means even without words. That is, objectively, the coolest thing anyone has ever said. It's probably some kind of magic. Harry said, uncertainly. It's definitely some kind of magic, and also objectively the coolest thing, those two statements are not in conflict. Harry almost smiled. By the time they hit the Scottish border, he'd actually smiled twice. Logan counted. They stopped at a petrol station north of Carlisle, and Logan filled the tank and Wade got coffee and returned to find Harry standing outside the car, looking up. The sky here was bigger than Surrey, darker, wider, less interrupted by suburban tidiness, and the stars were out, and Harry stood with his head tilted back, looking up at them with an expression that Logan thought might just be the first genuinely unguarded thing the kid had shown all day. Logan came and stood beside him. You've never been north before, he asked. I've never been anywhere, Harry said, without self-pity. Statement of fact. Logan stood with him for a moment, looking up. You will be, he said. They drove through the dark, and Harry fell asleep in the back seat somewhere in Dumfries and Galloway, his head against the window, his glasses slightly askew, his letter from Dumbledore folded on the seat beside him. The tension had gone out of him in sleep, the careful watchfulness, the braced for impact stillness, and he looked, for the first time since Logan had seen him, like a child. Hey, Wade said quietly. Yeah. We're keeping him, right? Logan looked in the rearview mirror at the sleeping boy and the sky outside getting darker and bigger around them. Yeah, he said. We're keeping him. The cabin was in Argyll, 40 minutes from Inverary, on a hillside above a loch that was deep green in summer and black in winter and all the colors of something ancient in between. Logan had owned it for 11 years under one of his functional identities, and it was, by any standard assessment, not designed for a child. It had one bedroom, a kitchen with questionable plumbing, a wood stove, 3 different axes, and a weapons locker that took up most of the utility room. Within the first week, it gained 2 additional bunks, a bookshelf, a desk, enough food to last a siege, and a medical kit that Wade stocked with the specific neurotic thoroughness of someone who'd needed one badly enough times to know exactly what belonged in it. Harry stood in the doorway the first morning and looked at the lock below and said nothing for a long time. Then he said, "It's loud." Logan, who was heating water on the stove, looked up. "The lock," Harry said. "The wind. Everything. It's very loud." He paused. "I like it. At home it was very quiet. When things were quiet it was usually because something was about to happen." He looked over his shoulder at Logan. "Here it's loud and nothing's happening." "Nothing's going to happen," Logan said. Harry turned back to the lock. "Okay." He was quiet for a moment. "Will you teach me?" he asked. "What you can do." "What I can do." Logan poured the water over the tea. "One thing at a time." Harry turned again and looked at him directly. Those eyes, green, impossibly bright, already with too much in them for an 8-year-old. "I'm not afraid of it," he said. "I don't want to be afraid of it. I've been afraid of it my whole life and it's not made me any safer." Logan looked at him for a long moment. No, he said. I don't suppose it has. He handed Harry the tea. Harry took it with both hands, like something to be held carefully. After breakfast, Logan said. Harry looked at the tea, and then back up, and this time, the smile was real and it stayed. Okay, he said. That afternoon, on the hillside above the lock while Wade provided commentary from a camping chair, Logan showed Harry what it meant to be still in your own skin. Not quiet, still. The difference between a body braced and a body ready. He showed it by example, standing on the grass without tension, and he watched Harry watch him and then, very carefully, try to replicate it. Harry was, from the first hour, a remarkable student. Not because he got things right. He didn't, not most of them, not immediately. But he had the quality that Logan had only ever seen in a handful of people across a very long life, the quality that separated those who grow into what they could be from those who just grow. He was honest about what he didn't know, and he didn't perform improvement, and when he failed he didn't dramatize it or shrink from it. He just tried again. The magic came in bursts, involuntary and enormous, when he tripped on a root and didn't fall because the air caught him, when Logan startled him and every stone in a 5-foot radius leaped an inch off the ground, when he laughed at one of Wade's jokes and the lock below briefly shivered for no meteorological reason. That, Wade said, pointing at the lock, is incredible. I didn't mean to, Harry said. The best things rarely happen on purpose, Wade said. That's, like, the secret of the universe. Logan crouched beside the impression in the grass where the stones had landed, studying it. The power was real and it was significant and it was, he chose his words carefully, because he was learning how Harry received information, learning that precision mattered to him, it was undisciplined. The river without a bed. The tide without a shore. We're going to work on that, Logan said. How? Harry asked. Same way you work on anything. Logan stood. Slowly. Carefully. Mostly by doing it wrong until you figure out right. Harry considered this. That doesn't sound very efficient. No, Logan agreed. But it's the way it works. It's the only way anything works, kid. Harry looked at his hands. Then he looked at the lock. Then he looked back at Logan with those sharp, too old, finally something like hopeful eyes. Okay, he said, for the third time in as many hours, and it sounded each time less like acceptance and more like decision. Okay. That night, Logan sat on the porch while the stars came out over Argyle, and he listened to the cabin behind him, Wade talking Harry through the plot of his favorite film with escalating inaccuracy and Harry occasionally interjecting corrections with growing confidence, and he didn't let himself think too far forward, because thinking forward was how you got into trouble, and instead he just sat with the moment as it was, which was, improbably, fine. His phone buzzed. Unknown number. Scottish area code. He almost didn't answer. Mr. Logan. My name is not important right now. What is important is that the boy you've taken is known to us, and the people I represent would very much like to discuss the situation with you at your earliest convenience. He read it twice. Then he put the phone face down on the porch railing. Inside, Harry laughed at something Wade said, and it was the second time today, and Logan added it to his count, and it outweighed the text by a significant margin. He'd deal with the magical world and its opinions about Harry Potter. Tomorrow. Tonight, the kid was laughing. That was enough. Chapter 2, The Forge and the Found. 3 years passed the way good years do, fast when you're inside them, enormous when you look back. Harry turned 9 in the cabin while a storm came off the lock and rattled every window, and Wade produced a cake that was technically a chimichanga stuffed with chocolate and birthday candles, and Logan sat across the table watching Harry blow out the candles with his eyes shut and his brow furrowed with the specific concentration of a child making a wish he actually believed in, and Logan didn't ask what he wished for because he didn't need to. He turned 10 in Montreal, where they'd gone because Wade had contacts with a retired SHIELD analyst who'd found fragmentary records about the magical world in Britain, and Harry spent most of the trip alternating between training sessions in a warehouse Wade rented on the east side and devouring every book the analyst's library had about magical history, sitting cross-legged on a folding chair with the books balanced on his knees and his glasses pushed up his nose, reading with the total absorption of someone who'd been hungry for information his entire life and had only just been given a table. He turned 11 in the cabin again, which was where he always wanted to be when given the choice, and the owl arrived the morning of his birthday with the letter from Hogwarts, thick cream parchment, green ink, the seal Harry had been carrying in his wallet for 3 years, and Harry sat at the kitchen table and read it twice with Logan across from him and Wade leaning over his shoulder, and then he set it down with great care and said, "Well." "Well," Logan agreed. "Right then," Harry said. He'd been expecting it. They'd all been expecting it. That didn't make it simple. But before any of that, before the letter and Diagon Alley and Platform 9 3/4, there were 3 years of becoming, and those 3 years were the story, and they went like this. The first winter in Argyle was the winter of foundations. Logan taught Harry how to fall without getting hurt, how to read a room when he walked into it, how to be still and how to be fast and how to know the difference between the moment that calls for one and the moment that calls for the other. He taught him to track, animals first, then people, reading the disturbance in grass and soil and air the way Logan read everything, by instinct refined into method. He taught him what muscles did and how to use a body as a tool. Harry was small and quick and learned by watching. He had the rare quality of not needing things explained twice, and if he got something wrong he'd work it in silence until he got it right rather than asking for help, which was a habit Logan recognized as having been learned in a context where asking for help wasn't safe, and which he set about carefully, patiently dismantling. "Ask," Logan said, one morning in the second month, when Harry had been struggling with the same movement for an hour rather than saying anything. Harry looked up from where he'd been trying to throw a larger opponent. Logan was standing in for the larger opponent, and his expression was the combination of stubborn and embarrassed he always wore when caught managing something solo. "I can get it," Harry said. "I know you can," Logan said. "Ask anyway." Harry's jaw shifted. "Why?" "Because knowing how to get help is as important as knowing how to get it done alone." He held Harry's gaze. "There's going to be times you're out of alone, kid. I want to make sure you know what to do then." Harry sat with that for a moment. "Then, where am I putting my weight wrong?" Logan adjusted his stance without a word. Harry tried again. Got it right on the third attempt, not just right, exactly right, with the clean efficiency of a technique that had clicked into place, and the satisfaction on his face was bright and uncomplicated. "Yeah," Logan said. "That." On the magic, they went slowly. Not because Logan was cautious about power, he'd never been cautious about power, and Harry's willingness to meet his own abilities head-on was one of the things Logan respected most about him, but because raw magical energy without control was genuinely dangerous, and Logan had the healing factor and Harry didn't. Yet. Wade took on the magic side of things, which surprised Logan until he saw how Wade approached it. Where Logan taught Harry to be precise, Wade taught him to be creative. They'd spend afternoons with Wade throwing ridiculous scenarios at Harry and Harry solving them through improvised magic that shattered every conventional rule. It was, Logan admitted privately, exactly what Harry needed. The precise and the adaptive, running in parallel. One afternoon in February, Harry was practicing focus work. Logan had been having him try to levitate objects with intention rather than emotion, the difference being that emotional magic worked but wasn't controllable, and control was the whole point, and he'd been working on a particular stone for 40 minutes with no result, sitting cross-legged on the cabin floor with the stone 3 feet in front of him, his face tight with concentration. Logan was at the table reading. Wade was cleaning a katana with one leg over the arm of the chair. The stone didn't move. Harry made a frustrated sound and pushed his glasses up and said, quietly, to the stone, "Come on." The stone leaped 3 feet straight up, hit the ceiling, and dropped back down. Silence. Then Wade pointed at Harry with the katana. There it is. That's not what you said to do, Harry said to Logan, half apologetically. No, Logan agreed. But it worked. Harry looked at the stone. I was annoyed at it. Magic runs on intent, Logan said. Right now yours runs on feeling. That's not wrong, it's just early. When we've trained it more, you'll have both. He leaned back. You'll be able to do it quietly. But right now, loud is fine. Harry picked up the stone and examined it. Can I try again? What do you think? The boy set the stone back down and looked at it and said nothing this time, and the stone rose slowly, unevenly, wobbling, and stayed up for 3 full seconds before dropping. Longer every time, Wade observed. Yeah, Harry said, with the particular compressed satisfaction of someone who doesn't celebrate until the war's won. He picked the stone back up. Tried again. Logan went back to his book. The stone rose behind him. He didn't look, but he smiled. Just slightly. Just enough. The letter from the magical world came not from Dumbledore, not directly, but through a woman named Minerva McGonagall, who arrived at the cabin on a grey Thursday in March of Harry's second year with them, appearing at the bottom of the track that led up from the road wearing robes in the Scottish rain with perfect composure, as if arriving at an unmarked cabin on a hillside in Argyle via means that left no tire tracks was entirely ordinary. Logan opened the door before she knocked. McGonagall looked at him. He looked at her. She had the face of someone who had made decisions her whole life and was comfortable with that, and she looked at Logan with the professional assessment of someone who understood dangerous people and was not, herself, frightened of them. He liked her marginally better for that. Mr. Logan, she said. Professor, he said, he'd done enough research to know the title, and stepped back from the door. She sat at the kitchen table with a posture that communicated she sat at kitchen tables on her own terms, and Logan made tea because Harry was out on the hill with Wade and he wanted a minute before this conversation involved the kid. McGonagall watched him make it with the patience of someone choosing patience deliberately. He's safe, she said, when the tea was poured. Yes. And learning? Yes. Magic specifically? Logan sat down. Some. We found some resources. He's got more raw ability than anything I've ever felt. But he's not had formal training, no. McGonagall wrapped both hands around the mug. That's why I'm here. Officially, I'm here to ensure the welfare of the boy, she stopped. Chose her next word differently. Of Harry Potter. Unofficially, I am here because Albus has been attempting to locate the child for 2 years by various methods and has not succeeded, and that speaks well of whoever has been protecting him. She looked at Logan directly. I'm told there are 2 of you. There are. I would like to meet Harry. You can, Logan said. In a few minutes. I want to tell you something first. She waited. The letter Dumbledore left with the Dursleys, Logan said. It said blood protection. It said care for him as their own. He kept his voice level. He was in a cupboard under the stairs. 8 years old. Bruises. Underfed. Latch on the outside of the door. McGonagall's face went very still. Did you know? Logan asked. The stillness held for a long moment. Then, no. Her voice was precise and controlled. I had concerns. Years ago, when Albus first placed him there. I watched that family for a day, and I had concerns, and Albus, she stopped. Albus what? Albus said it was necessary. That the blood protection required the sacrifice of comfort for the sake of safety. That the greater, she stopped again. Something moved in her face that Logan read as a woman reckoning, in real time, with a thing she'd accepted and was no longer sure she should have. The greater good, she finished, quietly. Logan said nothing. He let the silence do the work. He is well now. McGonagall said, finally. Getting there, Logan said. He's He looked for the right word. He's remarkable. And he doesn't need fixing, I want to be clear about that. He's not damaged. He's hard. There's a difference. Yes, McGonagall said. There is. The door opened. Wade came in first, because Wade always came in first in new situations regardless of any instructions to the contrary, with his mask pulled down to his chin and an expression of interested assessment aimed at McGonagall. Harry came in behind him, wind-flushed and bright-eyed, and stopped when he saw the visitor, and went through the same fast silent reading of the room that Logan had spent 1.5 years teaching him. He looked at McGonagall. At her robes. At the seal on the badge at her chest. He pulled the Hogwarts letter from his wallet. McGonagall's eyebrow went up. You've had that letter for a while, she said. 2 years, Harry said. Since Logan found me. He set the letter on the table. You're from Hogwarts. I am. Deputy Headmistress. She looked at him, really looked, the way Logan had seen her look at nothing else so far, like she was taking a full accounting. It's good to meet you properly, Mr. Potter. Harry sat down at the table across from her. He looked utterly composed, which Logan knew was genuine rather than performed, because Harry had stopped performing composure somewhere in the middle of his 2nd year with them and simply had it now, the real kind, that lived in the body rather than the face. Tell me about Hogwarts, Harry said. McGonagall told him. Harry listened with his complete attention, asking precise questions, not excited questions, smart questions, the questions of someone who'd been thinking about this for 2 years and was now filling in specific gaps. What were the houses? What was the curriculum? What were the restrictions on magic outside school? At that last one, McGonagall explained the decree for the reasonable restriction of underage sorcery, and Harry looked at Logan, and Logan looked back at Harry, and something passed between them that was not quite amusement. So right now, Harry said carefully, all my magic practice is technically undetectable, Logan said. We're in the Highlands. Ministry reads come off population centers. Remote enough out here. McGonagall chose, with evident professional deliberateness, not to pursue that avenue. I would also like to discuss, she said, the headmaster's wish to meet with Harry. The temperature in the room dropped slightly. Not from magic. He can wish that, Logan said. McGonagall looked between them. You're resistant. I don't take the kid to meet people who left him in a cupboard without doing my homework first. I understand that. However, when I've done my homework, Logan said, I'll let you know. McGonagall looked at him for a long moment. He thought she might push. Instead she looked at Harry, and her expression was something Logan hadn't seen from her yet, something that might, in a less composed face, have been called worried. You're in safe hands, she said to Harry, and Logan wasn't certain whether it was a question or a conclusion. Yes, Harry said, simply. She left the same way she came. The three of them watched from the cabin door as she walked down the track and then was simply gone, between one step and the next. Well, Wade said. She was cool. She was, Harry agreed. The Dumbledore thing, Wade said, looking at Logan. I know. We should, I know, Logan said. Not yet. Harry was reading the Hogwarts letter again, standing in the doorway with the evening light coming over the lock behind him. Logan watched him and thought about chess, not about pieces, but about understanding the board, and making sure Harry understood it completely before he set foot on it. They had time. For now. The wand was Logan's idea. He didn't talk about it for a long time, it lived in the back of his mind as a practical problem first and an emotional one second, and Logan had long experience with leaving things in the back of his mind to develop without forcing them. The practical problem was this: Harry needed a wand. That much was clear from everything McGonagall had said and everything the Montreal analysts' research had confirmed. Wand lore was a whole discipline, and wands from Ollivanders or equivalent were chosen through a matching process, the wand choosing the wizard, specifically aligned to magical signature and temperament. A standard wand through standard channels. The problem was that Harry's magical signature was not standard. Logan had been feeling it for 2 years now. The raw output of Harry's power had grown consistently with his training, and what he was sensing wasn't just a strong magical signature, it was something he'd only felt the equivalent of once before, in himself, in the after effects of the Weapon X procedure. It was power that regenerated. Power that recovered. When Harry practiced and exhausted himself magically, the recovery was faster than any of their research suggested was normal. And the output had a quality, a durability, a force, that Logan suspected went well beyond anything a standard wand was built to handle. Standard wands broke under overload. Logan had seen the Montreal analysts' research describe it: a wizard pushing beyond their wand's tolerance could shatter it, with varying degrees of danger. The thought of Harry in a fight, in the situations Logan suspected were coming for the boy who'd somehow survived a killing curse at age 1, the thought of that, and a wand that could break, he went to Weapon X's old records first, because he knew where they were and how to access them. The adamantium bonding process was in there, the precise metallurgical and surgical notes from the people who'd turned him into something they thought they could weaponize, and Logan read through it in a warehouse outside Glasgow one February night with a cold coffee going flat beside him, and he wasn't reading for himself. He was reading for the metal. Adamantium was indestructible. That was the point. That had always been the point. A wand made from adamantium wouldn't break. Couldn't break. Wouldn't be summoned, stolen, snapped, all the things that happened to wands in the research, all the vulnerabilities that Logan had catalogued from 2 years of reading everything he could find about how the magical world worked and how it could fail. The core was the harder problem. Wand cores channeled magic. The traditional ones, phoenix feather, dragon heartstring, unicorn hair, served as a conduit, a focuser, the thing that took a wizard's raw power and gave it direction. Logan understood this analogically in terms of his own claws, the adamantium casing, the living bone beneath, the specific biological resonance between weapon and body that made the whole thing work. What he needed was a core that matched Harry. Something with the same regenerative quality he kept sensing. Something alive, in the way that wand cores needed to be alive. The answer came from an unlikely direction. Wade broke into Dumbledore's office. This was not planned. Wade had many qualities, but planning was not among the ones he led with. What happened was this: Wade had gone to Edinburgh for supplies, had once again found the pub he'd been looking for since that day in the city 6 years ago, the one that vanished between steps, and had this time managed to follow a robed figure through a concealed entrance into what turned out to be a magical public house called the Leaky Cauldron Scottish equivalent, and had spent 2 hours there gathering information and having what he described as a fascinating conversation with a portrait, and had returned to Argyll with, among other things, one phoenix feather. Logan looked at the feather, which was golden and faintly warm to the touch and pulsed with something living. He looked at Wade. "From a bird named Fox," Wade said. "In Dumbledore's office. Which I may have briefly been in." "You broke into Dumbledore's office." "I prefer accessed without appointment." "Wade." "He wasn't using it. He wasn't even there." The bird looked bored. "Honestly, I think it was glad for the company. We had a whole moment, Fox and I. He basically gave it to me voluntarily, Wade." "It's one feather, Logan." Logan looked at the feather. He felt the living warmth of it against his palm. He thought about Harry, and the regenerative magic he'd felt rolling off the kid in waves, and the phoenix, the creature that burned and came back, that turned death into fuel for living, that couldn't be permanently extinguished. He closed his fist around the feather. "Right," he said. "Go get my tools." The forge took 3 nights. Logan had built things before, not many, because building wasn't instinct for him the way taking apart was, but he had hands that knew metal, that had been redesigned to work with metal, and he approached the adamantium the way he approached difficult things, with patience and precision and the specific focus that came from understanding, in his bones, what the material could survive. He filed a sliver from the edge of one claw. Not enough to matter, the claw would regenerate, but the shaving of living adamantium, detached from his body, lost its flexibility within minutes, hardening to the full indestructible immovability of the refined metal. Logan heated it to the limits of his forge and worked it with tools he'd spent a day making specifically for this, hammering the sliver into a rod barely wider than a pencil, 10¼ inches, with a fine taper that he shaped and reshaped across the first night until it sat in his hand with a weight and balance that felt right. Not right for him. Right in itself. The way he'd felt, somewhere deep in the instinct that lived below thought, the first morning he'd seen Harry stand on that hillside above the lock. The second night was the core. He worked the phoenix feather in, not by conventional wand making, which he didn't know and didn't have the materials for, but by his own method, heating the adamantium to the precise point at which it would accept an addition and pressing the feather into a channel he'd drawn along the rod's inner length with the edge of his smallest claw, a line so fine it was barely visible, and fusing it in with the particular care of a man who understood that the difference between a weapon and a tool was in how much care you brought to the making of it. Harry's blood was Logan's addition. Not planned, it came from a cut on Harry's finger on the second morning, when the kid sliced himself on a tent peg while they were setting up a shelter for a training exercise, and Harry pressed his finger to his palm and went to find the kit, and Logan watched a single drop of blood fall onto the grass, and something in him understood, with the certainty that bypassed argument, that Harry's blood belonged in this. He asked. Harry, characteristically, didn't hesitate. He pressed his healing cut to the channel in the metal, and the drop went in, and the adamantium sealed over it, and the rod of metal in Logan's hands shivered once, just once, a single long tremor, like a bell struck and resonating, and then was still. Third night was finishing. He worked the surface until it was smooth and slightly warm to the touch even at room temperature, the way living metal always is, and he etched a single line of pattern into the grip because Harry's hands deserved something to hold on to, and he stood back at 3 a.m. with the finished thing in his palm and looked at it. Wade was sitting against the workshop wall, awake despite the hour, as he often was when he knew something mattered. Well? Logan said. Wade came and looked at it without touching it. That, Wade said, very quietly, is either going to be the best thing we've ever done or the second best. He looked up. First best being obviously finding the kid. Shut up, Logan said, without heat. Yes it is. Shut up, Wade. He brought it to Harry the next morning. Harry was at the kitchen table eating breakfast and reading. He was always reading, the same relentless appetite for information that had identified him as Logan's kind of person in the first 6 hours of knowing him, and he looked up when Logan came in and something shifted in his face when he saw what was in Logan's hand. He set the book down. Logan put the wand on the table in front of him. Harry looked at it without touching it for a long moment. His eyes moved over it, the smooth metal, the barely visible line of pattern at the grip, the living warmth of it that was visible even without touching. Adamantium, he said. Core is phoenix feather. And, Logan sat down. A drop of your blood. Harry looked up. Your magic heals, Logan said. Fast. Faster than it should. Whatever it is you survived at age 1 left something in you, something regenerative. I don't have the magical theory vocabulary to be precise about it, but I've felt it every day for 2 years. The wand needs to match you. He held Harry's gaze. It can't be broken. Can't be stolen by a summoning spell, it's keyed to you, your blood, your signature. What you cast through it will be stronger than through a standard wand because it's built to handle what you produce without any loss. He paused. And if a spell comes back at you through it, it heals, Harry said. It heals. Harry picked up the wand. The light in the cabin changed. That was the only description. Something in the air shifted, and the lock outside brightened as though the cloud cover had thinned, and Harry sat with the wand in his right hand and his eyes slightly wide and his breathing changed, and Logan felt the energy wash out from him in a ring, low and contained and completely unlike the involuntary bursts of the early days, and then settle. Harry looked at the wand. He looked at Logan. Try it, Logan said. Harry pointed at the empty chair across the table. It moved. Precisely. Quickly. 3 feet to the left, without scraping the floor, set back down without a sound. Harry moved it back. He looked at his hand. He looked at the wand. He turned to look at Wade, who was standing in the doorway with an expression of pure, unperformed wonder. "It's like the difference," Harry said, slowly, between shouting and talking. He turned back to Logan. "Before it was always loud. Even when I tried to be quiet, there was always this," he searched for the word. "Overflow. Like pouring too much into a cup. This is," he pointed at the chair again, and it rose smoothly, quietly, perfectly controlled, to eye height and held there. "This is the right cup." Logan looked at the chair hanging in the air. He looked at Harry. He thought about the cupboard under the stairs and the 8-year-old with taped glasses and bruises shaped like fingers, and he thought about the boy sitting across from him now with a wand made from his own bones and the core of an immortal bird, and he didn't say anything, because he didn't have words for it. "Thank you," Harry said. Not small, not the gratitude of someone who expected little. The gratitude of someone who understood precisely what they'd been given. "Don't lose it," Logan said. Harry tucked it into his sleeve. It disappeared without a fold, adhering to his skin with the faint warmth of metal that recognized its owner. Wade made a sound that was categorically not a sniff. "I'm not crying," Wade said. "No one said you were," Logan said. "Good. Because I'm not." He paused. "It's allergies. We're in the Scottish Highlands in March. Aggressive allergies." Harry turned in his chair and looked at Wade with the small, precise smile that Logan had learned to read as Harry's most genuine expression. "Thank you too," Harry said. "For the feather." "It was Fawkes' contribution," Wade said. "I just facilitated." "You broke into Dumbledore's office." "I facilitated, Wade." "You're welcome, kid." The year before Hogwarts was the year Harry became. Not became who he would be. Logan had long since given up the idea that people became complete versions of themselves at any specific age. But became recognizable. Became the thing that was already there, emerging properly into the light. He was quick. Not just physically, though physically he was exceptional, with Logan's 3 years of training producing a boy who moved with a fluid economy of motion that no 11-year-old should have had, who could cover ground in complete silence, who could read a threat in the set of someone's shoulders from 40 feet. Quick in the way that counted, quick to understand, quick to decide, quick to act on the decision without the paralysis of second-guessing. He was also kind. This surprised people. It had surprised Wade, at first, who'd expected the hardness to preclude the softness, and had learned they were the same thing in Harry's case. The same quality that made him precise and decisive made him attentive to the people around him, noticing the small things, acting on them quietly. He'd started leaving Logan's coffee made on winter mornings without being asked, had started checking that Wade ate on the days when Wade was bad and didn't manage it himself, with the careful non-intrusive awareness of a child who'd learned early to read adult moods as a survival tool and had redirected that skill towards something useful. He was, Logan thought, on a Thursday afternoon in August watching Harry work through a complicated series of wand-work exercises on the hillside, genuinely good. Not in the way that was performed or learned. Good the way some things just are, the way the metal in his wand was good, in itself, without needing to be told. He was also, increasingly, funny. This was Wade's fault. "Right," Harry said, pointing his wand at 3 targets Logan had set up at the tree line. 3 different spells, 1 motion. "I saw Wade do it once with, Wade flung knives," Logan said. "Same principle. Wade's not 11. I can do it. You'll distribute the force wrong and knock yourself over." Harry looked at him. Pointed at the targets. Cast 3 distinct spells in a single smooth motion, moving the wand in a pattern he'd apparently worked out in his head, and all 3 targets went down in 3 different ways, lifted, thrown sideways, frozen in place, and he didn't knock himself over. He looked at Logan. "You've been practicing that," Logan said. "For a month," Harry confirmed. Logan looked at the targets. You could have told me. I wanted to see your face when it worked. Logan looked at him. Looked at the targets. Looked back. Smart ass, he said. Harry smiled. Learn from the best. You learned from Wade. Same thing. Wade, from his camping chair at the edge of the hill, threw both fists in the air. The shopping trip to Diagon Alley happened in July, 2 months before the Hogwarts letter's arrival date, because Logan believed in preparation and Harry believed in knowing the ground before you fought on it. McGonagall had, through their now monthly correspondence, provided the entry method, the leaky cauldron in London, the wall, the brick sequence, and the three of them arrived on a Tuesday when the alley was busy enough that 3 unusual figures could move through it without being the most unusual thing present. Logan wore the flannel shirt and kept his hands in his pockets and read the alley the way he read any operational environment, mapping exits and choke points and the general attitude of the population. The general attitude of the population was, initially, ignorant of Harry's presence. That lasted about 4 minutes. Someone recognized the scar. It went through the alley in a wave, not loud, not immediate, but visible, the way a current moves through water. People turning. Whispering. Staring with the specific quality of people looking at something they'd made mythological and were now confronting as flesh. Harry walked through it like it wasn't happening. Not ignoring it. Through it. He kept his pace, kept his attention on what was in front of him, kept the same expression he wore on the hillside when he was working, focused, present, deliberately unperformed. He'd known this was coming. They'd talked about it, the 3 of them, had been talking about it in various forms for months, the fame, the expectation, the weight of a story that had been built up around him while he was living in a cupboard. They're looking at a ghost, Harry had said, the night they'd discussed it most directly. They want the boy who lived. That's not me. I don't know who that is. You'll figure out what to say, Logan had said. I'm not going to say anything, Harry had said. I'm just going to be here. If who I actually am isn't what they wanted, that's not my problem. He'd been right. Logan watched it work, walking through Diagon Alley, the people who reached toward the myth colliding with the actuality of this specific boy, cool and self-possessed and looking at Flourish and Blots like it was the most interesting thing in the world, which it probably was, and finding that the actuality didn't quite fit the shape they'd made in their heads. He bought books. He bought them the way he did everything, systematically, thoroughly, buying not just the required texts but anything adjacent that looked useful, which was why they needed 2 bags by the time they left Flourish and Blots. In Ollivander's, which they visited out of professional interest rather than necessity, the old wandmaker looked at the wand Harry produced when asked and went very, very quiet for a long time. May I? Ollivander asked. Harry handed it over. Ollivander held it. His usual fluid professional confidence stilled into something more genuine, the stillness of a craftsman encountering something outside his categories. He turned it in his hands, held it up to the light, pressed one finger to the grip where the pattern was etched, and stood for almost a full minute in complete silence. Adamantium, he said finally. Yes, Logan said. I have never, Ollivander stopped. Started again. The core. Phoenix feather, Logan said. Among other things. Ollivander looked at him. Then at Harry. Then back at the wand. He handed it back to Harry, and when Harry's fingers closed around it, Ollivander watched the small shift in the boy's expression, the subtle settling, like something finding its own gravity, and something in the old wandmaker's face moved from professional to something else. I don't know what to tell you about this wand, Ollivander said, because I haven't made it, and I can't read it the way I read my own work. But I can tell you, he looked at Harry directly. It suits you. That is rare in its own right. And whatever it will do, he paused. I don't believe it's been done before. Harry looked at the wand in his hand. Good, he said. They came back to the cabin in late July, and August was training and reading and the long Scottish evenings by the loch that Logan had come to think of as the real education, the 3 of them sitting outside while the light went, talking about things that mattered and things that didn't, covering the same ground from different angles, and Harry gradually building the full picture of what he was walking into. "Dumbledore," Harry said one evening, out of relative silence. "Yeah," Logan said. "You still don't trust him?" "Not yet." Harry picked up a stone from the bank and turned it in his fingers. "McGonagall thinks she doesn't say it, but she thinks he's right. About most things." "McGonagall's smart," Logan said. "Smart people can be wrong when they trust someone longer than they should. What do you want me to do when I meet him?" "Nothing specific." Logan looked at the lock. "Be yourself. Don't perform for him. Don't let him make you into a piece of something without your knowledge." "How do I know if he's doing that?" "You'll feel it," Logan said. "The moment someone starts talking about what you're meant to be, what you're destined for, what the prophecy says or what the greater good requires, you'll feel the difference between that and a person talking to you." Harry was quiet. "I trust you," Harry said, after a moment. "Simply." Logan didn't say anything. "Both of you," Harry added, and Wade, who'd been pretending to be asleep in his chair, made a small sound of acknowledgement without opening his eyes. Logan looked at the lock. The water was black and deep and it had been there long before any of them and would be there long after, and it did not care about prophecies or greater goods or the chess games of powerful men who thought they understood the board. He thought about a cupboard under some stairs. He thought about a latch on the outside of a door. He thought about 3 years and a boy who'd grown from something pressed down into something that couldn't be pressed anymore, and wouldn't be, and he held that thought for as long as he needed to. "I know," he said. The lock moved in the dark. The stars came out over Argyle. 2 weeks later, the Hogwarts letter arrived. Chapter 3, Platform 9 3/4 King's Cross Station on the 1st of September was everything Logan had expected and several things he hadn't. He'd expected the crowds, the particular dense chaos of a major London terminus at rush hour, families moving in packs, trolleys colliding, the overlapping noise of announcements and footsteps and the specific pitched stress of people running late. He'd expected to find the platform, though the method was new. He'd expected Harry to be fine. What he hadn't expected was how it would feel, walking into it. Harry was ahead of them by half a step, pushing the trolley with his trunk and Hedwig's cage. The owl had arrived 2 weeks after the Hogwarts letter, which Wade had taken as a sign and Logan had taken as one more magical phenomenon to add to the running list, and he moved through the crowd with the same fluid economy he moved through everything, reading the gaps in the human traffic and threading them without appearing to hurry. He was wearing jeans and a grey jacket and his glasses and he looked, from the back, like an ordinary 11-year-old. Then he turned to check Logan's position and the scar caught the light and a woman 20 feet away stopped dead and grabbed her companion's arm. Harry had already looked away. He'd clocked the reaction, catalogued it, moved on. Logan watched the whole thing take 4 seconds. "He good?" Wade said, appearing at Logan's shoulder. "He's fine," Logan said. "Are you good?" "I'm fine." "You've got the face." "I don't have a face." "The specific face you make when you're feeling a thing and not saying it. It's very distinctive, Logan, it's like your normal face but the jaw is doing something extra." Logan's jaw was, in point of fact, doing something extra. He deliberately relaxed it. "I'm fine," he said. "Let's find the platform." The barrier between platforms 9 and 10 was a solid brick wall that looked exactly like a solid brick wall and felt, at close range, like something that wanted to be a door. Logan tested the edge of it with 2 fingers while Harry watched, and felt the give in it, not physical, but something else, the particular sensation he'd been feeling around magical phenomena for 3 years now, like a frequency shift. "McGonagall said don't hesitate," Harry said. "I know what she said. So stop poking it and go through." Logan looked at him. Harry looked back, the small precise smile at the corner of his mouth. Logan went through the wall. The platform on the other side was a different world, not metaphorically. The sensory shift was immediate. The ambient noise changed in character, the particular dense press of Muggle King's cross replaced by something that had the same volume but a different texture, and the smell was different, wood smoke and something herbal and the specific electric warm scent that Logan now associated with concentrated magical activity. The Hogwarts Express sat along the platform in a billow of real steam, scarlet and enormous and completely, stubbornly real, and families moved around it with trunks and cages and owls and cats and in several cases what appeared to be frogs, and the platform had the festive anxious atmosphere of a departure. Wade came through beside him. "Oh," Wade said. He said it the way you say a word when you mean something much larger than the word contains. "Oh, this is real." "Obviously it's real," Harry said, coming through last, pushing the trolley. He'd stopped at the barrier and felt it more carefully than Logan had, taking his time, letting the sensation of it inform him, and now he stood on platform 9 3/4 and looked down the length of the train with an expression that Logan read precisely because he'd been reading Harry's expressions for 3 years. It was the expression Harry made when something he'd been thinking about for a long time turned out to be true. "Okay," Harry said, under his breath. To himself, not to them. "Okay," Logan agreed. They loaded the trunk. Hedwig's cage went in the luggage rack. Harry stood on the platform and looked up at Logan with the slightly adjusted angle of someone who'd grown this year, not enough, still smaller than he should have been for his age, though 3 years of actual food had helped, and Logan looked back at him. "Rules," Logan said. "You're doing rules now," Harry said. "Here. On the platform. Quick version. Watch your back. Trust your instincts. Don't perform for anyone." Logan paused. "Don't start fights you don't have a reason for." "But if I have a reason?" "Finish them." Harry nodded. Logan held his gaze a moment longer, the particular loaded look of two people who communicate mostly in compression, who've been learning each other's shorthand for 3 years, and then Harry turned to Wade. Wade had his arms crossed and was looking at Harry with an expression that was trying to be casual and losing comprehensively. "Wade," Harry said. "I'm not going to say something embarrassing," Wade said. "You are absolutely going to say something embarrassing." "I'm really not, I've prepared specifically," Wade stopped. Started again. His voice came out slightly different than usual, the layer of performance thinned to almost nothing. "You're going to be the best thing that's ever walked into that school," he said. "Not because of the scar or the prophecy or any of the stuff they've been building up in their heads. Because of you. And if anyone tries to tell you otherwise I will personally," Wade, Logan said. "Have a stern conversation with them," Wade finished, with dignity. Harry stepped forward and hugged him. Wade, who processed physical contact in about 7 different ways at various times, went briefly rigid and then wrapped both arms around Harry and held on for a moment with the grip of someone allowing themselves something they'd been careful about for a long time. Then Harry stepped back and looked at Logan. Logan put one hand on the back of Harry's head, the same gesture he'd used on the hillside sometimes, brief and unambiguous, and Harry leaned into it for exactly 1 second. "You've got the wand," Logan said. Harry touched his sleeve. The wand was there, the faint warmth of it familiar. "Yes. You've got everything you need." "Yes." Logan dropped his hand. "Go." Harry went. He didn't look back at the barrier. He boarded the train with the same walk he'd had on the hillside, fluid, unhurried, reading the available space, and was gone. Logan watched the window until he saw Harry find a compartment and sit down, and then he looked away, and Wade was beside him with his arms crossed again, watching the train. "He's going to be fine," Wade said. "I know," Logan said. "I know you know. I'm also saying it. Okay. He's going to walk into that school and they're not going to know what hit them." "Wade. I'm saying it. I heard you." The train whistle blew. Steam billowed down the platform. Logan stood with his hands in the jacket pockets he never put things in and watched the Hogwarts Express move, and he held the feeling that was in his chest at arm's length and examined it, the combination of right and hard that had no clean name, and then put it away. Pub. Wade said. Yes, Logan said. They went back through the wall. The compartment Harry found was empty, which suited him. He sat with his back to the window and his face to the door, which was habit, and he set his bag on the seat beside him and took out one of the extra books he'd bought at Flourish and Blott's, not a school text, a history, and read for the first 20 minutes while the train moved through London and out into English countryside. He was aware of the platform. The people. The eyes that found his scar and then found him and had to do the recalibration. He'd been aware of all of it and it had passed through him without catching, the way water passes through a net, because he'd been preparing for this specific experience for 2 years and because the quality of his awareness was such that he could acknowledge a thing without being moved by it. The compartment door slid open. A girl with dark brown hair and an extremely organized expression stood in the doorway, looking into the compartment with the systematic assessment of someone who'd already checked several others. She was carrying a book in her hand, a school text, but she'd already annotated it. Harry could see the notes in the margins from 3 feet away. Is anyone sitting here? She asked. No, Harry said. Then, because he'd clocked the book, which one is that? She looked down at it. A History of Magic. The required text. How far in? She blinked. Chapter 4. Why? Chapter 7 has an error. The date on the 3rd paragraph, the founding of Hogsmeade. Cross-reference it with Bathilda Bagshot's main text and the dates don't match. The girl stared at him. Then she came in and sat down across from him with the expression of someone who just upgraded their estimate of a situation. Hermione Granger, she said. Harry Potter, he said. Her eyes went to his forehead, found the scar, and came back to his face without dwelling, which he appreciated. The date discrepancy, she said. Have you actually verified it? Because I've been trusting the required text. Bagshots is more reliable. Published earlier, first-hand sources. Harry produced the relevant book from his bag. He'd brought it because he'd brought everything he thought he'd need, and opened it to the page. Hermione leaned forward and read. Her expression did several things in rapid sequence that Harry had seen his own face do in mirrors when he found a piece of information that didn't fit his framework. That's a discrepancy of 40 years, she said. Yes. The school text is wrong. Probably a transcription error from the 4th edition. They've never corrected it. Hermione sat back and looked at him with an expression that had moved from assessing to something closer to genuine interest. How do you know about the editions? I read a lot, Harry said. Most people who say that mean they read some, she said. I read a lot, Harry said again. She looked at him for a moment. Then she opened her own book to chapter 4, found the passage, and wrote a note in the margin, precise and small. I'm Muggle-born, she said, without particular emphasis. Statement of fact. You. Half-blood, Harry said. Raised by, he paused. The honest answer was a man with an adamantium skeleton and a mercenary with a healing factor, which he suspected would require more explanation than he currently wanted to give. 2 people who aren't magical, he said. How do you know so much already, then? They found me good resources, Harry said. And I had time. Hermione considered this. She seemed like a person who accepted partial answers when they were clearly deliberate, which Harry counted in her favor. Are you nervous? She asked. Not in the way people asked when they wanted to project their own nerves onto you. She was asking about him specifically. No, Harry said. I am, Hermione said, with complete straightforwardness. Not paralyzingly. But I am. It's very new and there's a lot I don't know yet. There's a lot I don't know either, Harry said. I just, don't mind not knowing. It's what you do about it that matters. She looked at him. Something settled in her expression. Right, she said. She opened the history of magic to chapter 4. Can I see that Bagshot reference again? They were still talking when the train crossed into the Midlands, the book spread between them and the conversation having moved through several subjects with the natural momentum of two people who were both accustomed to thinking faster than their usual company expected. Hermione had opinions, strong ones, held with confidence but not rigidity, the kind that updated when presented with new information, and Harry found this interesting in the way he found most things interesting that didn't immediately try to tell him what he was supposed to be. The compartment door slid open again. A round-faced boy stood there with a toad cupped in both hands and an expression of low-level ongoing anxiety that had the particular quality of anxiety worn so long it had become a baseline. "Sorry," he said. "Have you seen a toad?" "Only I've lost mine and I've been up and down the train." He saw the toad wasn't there. His face did the thing. "He keeps getting away. I'm Neville. Neville Longbottom. Harry Potter." "Come in," Harry said, because the boy looked like he'd been standing in corridors apologizing for his toad for hours and could do with sitting down. Neville came in. He sat with the careful posture of someone accustomed to being a low priority and doing his best not to take up too much of any space. He held the toad. "Trevor," he said, when asked, with the focus of someone maintaining vigilance. "I'm terrible at magic," Neville said, with the preemptive admission of someone who'd found that volunteering the bad information got it over with faster. "Gran says I probably didn't inherit it properly. My family kept trying to make sure it was there when I was small." "What did they try?" Harry asked. Neville blinked. Most people apparently didn't ask follow-up questions. "They pushed me out of a window once. Second story. To see if I'd do something." "Did you?" "I bounced," Neville said. Harry looked at him. "That's magic, Neville." Neville looked uncertain. "It might have been the way I landed. You bounced," Harry said, with the precision of someone who understood the distinction between ordinary physics and the extraordinary. "That's magic. Just a different kind than wand work." Neville turned this over. The ongoing low-level anxiety didn't go away, but something in it shifted, slightly, incrementally, the beginning of a recalibration. Hermione was looking at Harry with an expression he'd seen Logan use, the look of someone filing away information about how you operated. He ignored it, not because it bothered him, but because filing was fine. A boy appeared in the compartment doorway. Blonde, sharp-faced, with the carrying posture of someone raised to take up room as a matter of principle, and two larger boys behind him arranged in a configuration that Harry read immediately as an unconscious protection arrangement. Not protection of the blonde boy from violence. Protection of his importance from challenge. "They're saying Harry Potter's on the train," the blonde boy said. His eyes went to Harry's forehead immediately, because everyone's did, and then he recalibrated just as immediately when the scar confirmed the search. "It's you." "Yes," Harry said. "I'm Draco Malfoy." Said like an announcement. Like the name was supposed to register. "Harry Potter," Harry said, which he'd already been for 11 years and wasn't going to inflect differently based on audience. Draco looked at Neville. The look had a quality of dismissal so automatic it appeared not to be conscious. Then it moved to Hermione, and the dismissal became something more deliberate when he clocked her Muggle-born status from, Harry assumed, the lack of a family name he recognized, and the way she'd been taking notes rather than owning her knowledge. "You should be careful," Draco said, looking back at Harry, "about who you make friends with on the train. Some families," he paused. "Some people aren't worth your time." Harry looked at him for a moment without speaking. He was thinking, briefly, about the two people who'd found him in a cupboard under some stairs, and what they'd seen when they walked in there, and the particular human tendency to assign worth in advance based on category rather than content. He thought about Logan's voice in the cabin. "The moment someone starts talking about what you're meant to be, I'll work that out myself," Harry said. "Thanks." Draco's composure flickered. He'd expected something else, either deference or hostility, both of which fit the pattern he was working from. What he got was something quieter and more final than either, and it didn't fit, and Harry watched him not quite know what to do with it. "Right," Draco said. He looked around the compartment once more, registering and dismissing all 3 occupants in one sweep. Well. When you've thought about it, I have, Harry said. Draco left. The 2 large boys followed. Neville let out a breath. That was Draco Malfoy, Hermione said, to Harry. I know who he is. His family is, I know who they are too. Harry looked at her. Doesn't change anything. Hermione looked at him for a moment. Then she nodded, once, with the crisp finality of someone making a decision. No, she said. I suppose it doesn't. Hogwarts, seen at night from the boats across the Black Lake, was the kind of sight that landed differently on different people. Some of the first years gasped. Some went silent. Some crowded the edges of the boats with the excitement of children who'd been waiting for this exact moment their whole lives and had arrived at it with uncomplicated joy. Harry sat in the middle of his boat and looked at the castle rising from the rock above the water, lit from within, the towers drawing against the dark sky, and he felt something he didn't immediately put a name to. It wasn't the excitement of the others, though it wasn't the absence of excitement either. It was something more specific, the feeling of walking into a place where something important was going to happen, the kind of importance that didn't announce itself but sat in the air like a change in pressure. He'd felt it before. Logan called it situational awareness. Wade called it the universe warming up. He put his hand briefly to his sleeve. The wand was there. He looked up at the castle. What are you thinking? Neville said, from beside him, in the voice of someone who genuinely wanted to know. That it's going to be complicated, Harry said. That's not reassuring, Neville said. I didn't say it was bad, Harry said. Complicated can be good. He looked at Neville. You're going to be fine, you know. You don't know that, Neville said. I know you bounced, Harry said. That's a foundation. Neville looked at him. Looked at the castle. Looked back at the toad in his hands. Something in his posture shifted, fractionally, but genuinely. The boats moved through the dark water toward the castle, and Harry watched the lights in the towers, and somewhere behind one of those windows something old and very powerful was aware of his arrival, and was adjusting its plans accordingly, and Harry knew this the way he knew most things, not from information but from the instinct trained over 3 years to read the room he was walking into. He didn't flinch from the knowledge. He filed it and moved on. The Great Hall was, a lot. Harry walked in behind a crowd of first years with Hermione on his left and Neville on his right and took in the ceiling first, because Logan had taught him to look up and out before he looked at what was in front of him, and the ceiling was the sky, or the appearance of the sky, dusk blue with early stars, and that alone told him something about the scale of magic this place ran on continuously. Then he looked at the tables. For long tables, hundreds of students, the upper years watching the procession of first years with the graduated interest of people who'd been through this and were now on the other side of it. His eyes went to the staff table automatically, reading it the way he read any configuration of authority, who sat where, who faced who was watching what. The man at the center of the staff table was old. Genuinely old, in the way that meant decades of accumulated weight rather than just years. White beard. Half-moon glasses. Blue eyes that were, and Harry felt this before he consciously understood what he was feeling, very aware of him. He met Dumbledore's gaze from 30 feet away, across the length of the hall, for perhaps 2 seconds. Dumbledore's expression was one of warmth and welcome and something beneath both those things that was considerably more complicated. Harry looked away first. Not from discomfort. Because he'd seen what he needed to see. The sorting happened by hat. This had been in McGonagall's descriptions and in the research, but the actuality of the hat, old, patched, mounted on a stool, proceeding to sing at length about house qualities, was something that defied preparation. Harry stood in the line and listened to the hat's song and processed it as information, categorizing the 4 houses by what the hat described. Hermione was sorted into Gryffindor. Neville was sorted into Gryffindor, after a hat conference that took slightly longer than most and left Neville looking like a man who'd been told something that both surprised and terrified him. Longbottom, Neville, had barely sat before the hat announced Gryffindor, and Neville walked to the table in the slightly stunned way of someone who'd been told his whole life he barely had magic and had just been told by a sentient hat that he belonged with the brave ones. Harry had watched this. Filed it. Potter, Harry. The hall went quiet. Not gradually, immediately. The complete silence of 400 people simultaneously deciding to be still. Harry walked to the stool and sat down, and the hat dropped over his eyes. The inside of the hat was dark and smelled like old cloth and something else, something that Harry's 3 years of magical training had made him able to identify as the residue of accumulated magical contact, the equivalent of the way Logan's cabin smelled when the fire had been burning for hours. "Interesting," said a voice inside his head. Not loud. Thoughtful. The voice of something old that had been in conversation with itself for 1,000 years. "Very, very interesting. You're quite different from what I expected, Harry Potter." "I usually am," Harry thought back. The hat made a sound that might have been amusement. "Plenty of courage, yes. I'd say Gryffindor, but, You're not afraid of anything, are you? That's different from courage. Courage is feeling fear and proceeding anyway. You've trained the fear out. That's a different quality. Should I be afraid? No. I'm observing." A pause. "There's more intelligence here than I usually see at your age. The patience of someone significantly older. Loyalty that runs very deep, not to institutions. To specific people. You would die for them." Yes, Harry thought. "And ambition, not for power. For competence. For being as good at what you do as it is possible to be." Yes, Harry thought. "I could make an argument for any house," the hat said. "But what I think you'd find most useful, I don't need useful," Harry thought. "Put me where I fit." "You fit," the hat said, with something like finality, "in Gryffindor." The hall erupted. Harry took the hat off and handed it to McGonagall and walked to the Gryffindor table with the same walk he'd used coming off the train, and the noise was enormous and specific, not just general welcome noise, but something with Harry Potter's name in it, a collective release of a held breath that the whole hall had apparently been holding since the moment his name was called. He sat down beside Hermione. Across from Neville. "How was the hat?" Hermione asked, because she was Hermione. "Thorough," Harry said. Neville was looking at him with an expression that mixed relief and something like the beginning of settled conviction. "Same table," Neville said. "Same table," Harry agreed. The feast appeared on the table and Harry looked at it with the specific appreciation of someone for whom food being abundant had once been extraordinary and was now, after 3 years, approaching ordinary, but never quite arrived there, never quite lost the edge of significance. He ate and watched the hall and let the noise of it wash over him without catching. At the staff table, Dumbledore was watching him. Harry knew this without looking. He'd known since he sat down. He reached for the potatoes without changing expression, and the evening settled into the specific ordinary of a place becoming familiar, and the complicated thing he'd felt in the boats resolved into something simpler and more durable. He was here. He was himself. That was the foundation. Everything else was what you built on it. Gryffindor Tower was reached through a portrait of a fat woman in a pink dress who required a password and had opinions about people who forgot it, and the common room beyond was warm and red and busy with upper years and first years finding their coordinates in a new place. Harry took in the room in the usual way, exits, layout, the general social topology of the people in it, and then found the first-year boy's dormitory and his bed with the red curtains and his trunk at the foot of it and sat on the edge of the mattress for a moment in the relative quiet while the other boys, Ron Weasley, Dean Thomas, Seamus Finnegan, and Neville, arranged their things around him. Neville sat on his own bed and put Trevor in a secure box and looked around the room with an expression that was still recalibrating. "You really think I'm going to be okay here?" he said. "Not to the room." To Harry. Harry looked at him. "I think you've got everything you need," he said. "You just haven't been shown how to use it yet." Neville absorbed this. Who showed you? Two people who didn't much care what I was supposed to be, Harry said. Just what I actually was. Neville nodded, slowly. Like a man filing a piece of information he was going to need. Harry took out his notebook, a habit from the cabin, Logan's influence, recording what he observed and what he thought about it, and wrote 3 names at the top of the first clean page. Dumbledore. Quirrell. Snape. He'd watched the staff table carefully at dinner. Quirrell, the defense teacher, had the particular twitchiness of someone managing more than one thing at once. Logan had a term for it, operating in 2 contexts simultaneously, the thing that happened when you were pretending to be in one place while actually being somewhere else in your head. It was subtle. Most people wouldn't catch it. Snape had stared at him with an intensity that was something other than the general scar fascination everyone else managed. Something more specific. Something that had edges. Harry put a question mark after Snape's name. A different kind of question mark after Quirrell's. Then he put the notebook away and lay back on the bed and looked at the red curtains and let himself, briefly, just be here, in this specific place, with these specific people, at the beginning of something that the hat had called complicated and that felt, now that he was inside it, less like a threat and more like a problem he had enough tools to solve. His hand found his sleeve. The wand was warm. He thought about Logan's face on the platform. The 1-second weight of his hand on the back of Harry's head. Wade's arms holding on. He thought about what he'd said to Neville, 2 people who didn't much care what I was supposed to be. He was going to need that here, he understood. That specific orientation. Because this place, this extraordinary, luminous, complicated place, had been building a story about who Harry Potter was for 10 years without his participation, and he was now inside it, and the story was going to push. He didn't intend to be pushed. Outside the tower windows, the Scottish sky was the same sky as above the cabin in Argyle. The same stars. Harry looked at it until he was satisfied that this was true and then closed his eyes. When he opened them, it was morning. The first week of classes sorted itself into a map quickly. Transfiguration was McGonagall's, precise, rigorous, demanding in the way that Logan's physical training had been demanding, which was to say it demanded things of you and waited without apology for you to meet them. Harry met them. His wand made transfiguration clean in a way that drew attention. When the class converted matches to needles, his became not just a needle but a perfect one, edges so sharp they caught the light, and McGonagall picked it up and examined it with the expression she'd worn at the cabin and said, without inflection, good, and Harry knew that good from McGonagall was calibrated differently than most people's good. Charms was straightforward. Flitwick was exuberant and precise in a combination Harry found effective. Herbology was interesting and potions was Snape. The dungeon classroom was cold and low-lit and had the particular atmosphere of a space designed to communicate authority before its occupant spoke. Snape walked in with the specific quality of someone who'd spent many years ensuring that rooms registered his entrance, and opened with the register, and paused at Harry's name in the way Harry had been predicting since writing it in his notebook. "Ah," Snape said. "Harry Potter. Our new celebrity." Harry said nothing. Snape asked him questions, rapid fire, the pattern of it designed to expose knowledge gaps in front of the class, the particular pedagogical cruelty of using the fear of public failure as a teaching tool. Bezoar. Aconite. The difference between monkshood and wolfsbane. Harry answered all of them. Not to perform. Not to challenge. Because he knew the answers, and when someone asked him a question he knew the answer to, he answered it. Snape's questioning had a rhythm, the rhythm of someone expecting to find a gap, building toward the gap, framing the gap as revelation, and when the gap wasn't there, the rhythm had nowhere to go. "Do you know the properties of a bezoar?" Snape said. "Stone found in a goat's stomach," Harry said. "Acts as a general antidote to most poisons. Used in emergency treatment when the specific poison is unknown." "And why is that useful to know?" Because if you're poison and you don't know what with, you need something that works across categories rather than being specific. A silence. 5 points to Gryffindor, Snape said, with the clipped precision of a man awarding points through gritted teeth. Harry looked back at the textbook. Around him, the slight recalibration of the class rippling outward, the first years adjusting their read of him. Hermione, beside him, was writing something in her notes with the slightly intensified focus of someone managing excitement at a volume that wouldn't embarrass anyone. Neville, on his other side, had been visibly braced for the Snape experience since they'd heard about it from the upper years, and was now slightly less braced, with the look of someone who'd expected an earthquake and gotten a strong wind. Harry caught Neville's eye. Neville let out the breath he'd been holding. Harry went back to the textbook. The letter from Logan arrived on a Wednesday. Hedwig carried it in from the Ollery with the satisfaction of a job completed and waited for a treat with absolute imperiousness while Harry read. Kid. McGonagall's been in touch. Says you've landed well. Settle in before you go looking for trouble. Wade says don't tell anyone about the wand composition unless you trust them completely. He's right. For once. We're here. L below that, in different handwriting, more cramped and energetic, Harry. My cousin's son's friend's sister's neighbor heard from someone at the ministry that Dumbledore has been asking questions about the Potter boy's unusual magical development to various people in the academic community. He knows something's different. Don't let him measure you before you're ready to be measured. Also, I told Fawkes High through a letter I sent to Dumbledore's office. Fawkes wrote back. The bird is definitely sentient. We're pen pals now. Love, Wade. P.S. Logan says I can't put love, but I'm keeping it. Harry read this twice. Then he folded it carefully and put it in his inside jacket pocket, against his chest, and looked out of the window at the morning sky. Dumbledore asking questions. He'd expected it. The man was observant, clearly, and whatever he'd built his plans around, Harry not being a frightened 11-year-old in a cupboard was going to require significant adjustment. Harry thought about the hat. About the question it had raised without resolving, courage versus the absence of fear. He thought about Logan on the hillside, 3 years ago, standing still in his own skin and showing Harry what it looked like. It looked like this. Like knowing the board was in play and staying exactly where you stood. He picked up his charms textbook and found a chapter on the levitation charm and read ahead, 3 chapters further than the week's assignment, with the focused appetite of someone who'd found the right cup and intended to fill it completely. Outside the window the Scottish sky stretched clear and enormous, the same sky as Argyle, and in it an owl was flying west. Chapter 4, The Troll, the Mirror, and the Man Who Wasn't Whole. October arrived in Hogwarts the way it always did in Scotland, without apology, stripping the last warmth out of the air and replacing it with something sharp and honest that smelled of wood smoke and coming rain. The trees around the lake went red and gold and the castle responded by becoming itself more completely, the fires in the common room burning brighter, the torches in the corridors casting longer shadows, the staircases shifting with what seemed like greater frequency, as though the cold made the castle restless. Harry had been at Hogwarts for 6 weeks and had developed a working map of it, not the physical layout, which was in Hogwarts, a history and mostly accurate, but the social and political topology. Where authority pooled and where it thinned. Which teachers meant what they said and which ones said one thing and measured another. Which students were performing their confidence and which ones simply had it. He'd also identified 3 things that didn't fit. The first was the 3rd-floor corridor that Dumbledore had announced was forbidden, which Harry had walked past on the 2nd week because Logan had taught him that knowing what was in a restricted area was operationally important, and through the door he'd heard something large and breathing and faintly 3 times that matched nothing in any bestiary he'd read and everything in his instincts. The second was Professor Quirrell, who Harry had been watching since the first potions class when he'd noticed Snape staring at his scar and Quirrell flinching in the same moment, as though the 2 events were connected by something invisible. Quirrell gave defense against the dark arts lessons with the specific quality of someone who understood the subject much better than they were teaching it, which was always interesting. The third was the package. Small, brown-wrapped, delivered to Dumbledore's office by a high-security Gringotts escort on a Thursday morning in late September. Harry had seen it from the corridor above. He'd been using the upper walkway because the main staircase was having one of its opinionated days, and he'd watched through the window at an angle, and he'd watched the vault number on the package, 713. He'd noted it. Filed it. Written it in the notebook below Quirrell's name with a question mark. He hadn't said anything to Hermione or Neville yet. Not because he didn't trust them, he did, more with each week of watching how they operated, but because he was still assembling the picture, and presenting incomplete pictures to good people led them to incomplete conclusions, and that was waste. He thought about Logan's voice, "Don't move until you understand the board." He understood more of it than he had in September. He was ready to start moving in October. The thing that accelerated his timeline was the troll. Halloween at Hogwarts had the enthusiastic excess of an institution that embraced tradition with both hands. The Great Hall was transformed by the time the students arrived for the feast, lit by hundreds of real jack-o'-lanterns that floated at various heights and cast amber light across tables loaded with food that leaned heavily into the autumnal and decorative end of things. Harry sat between Neville and Hermione and ate and watched the hall with the easy attentiveness he brought to all rooms. He was watching Quirrell. The defense professor was at the staff table eating very little and watching a point somewhere above the Slytherin table with the quality of focus that Harry recognized as someone calculating the timing of something. 15 minutes into the feast, Quirrell stood up, knocked over his goblet, and staggered into the great hall with his turban askew and his robes disordered and announced in a voice calibrated to carry across the entire room, "Troll, in the dungeons, thought you ought to know." Then he fainted, with the theatrical completeness of someone who'd practiced it. The hall erupted. Dumbledore restored order immediately with a single sharp crack of sound from his wand, and directed the prefects to move students to dormitories by house, and the hall began to empty in organized streams, and Harry stayed seated for exactly long enough to watch Quirrell stand up from his faint with rather more coordination than a genuinely unconscious person usually managed. "Hermione's not here," Neville said, beside him. Harry turned. Neville was right. The seat on his other side was empty. He thought back through the dinner, quickly. Hermione had left before the feast started, he remembered now. Something Ron Weasley had said in Charms that afternoon, too loud and too careless, about her being a nightmare and no wonder she had no friends. Hermione had heard it. Her face had done something controlled and hurt. She hadn't come to dinner. She'd been in the girls' bathroom. She was in the girls' bathroom right now. "The dungeons," Harry said. Neville looked at him. "If the troll is in the dungeons and Hermione doesn't know, the prefects are supposed to. The prefects are moving hundreds of students upstairs," Harry said, already standing. "No one's checking the bathrooms." Neville stood up immediately. Harry looked at him, the question unspoken. "Same table," Neville said. They moved. The corridors were organized chaos, students moving upstairs in blocks, prefects managing the flow, the occasional teacher sweeping through with wands drawn. Harry and Neville moved against the stream, taking the route Harry had mapped in his first 2 weeks, the one that used the upper access corridor above the main flow and came out near the girls' bathrooms on the second floor. Harry smelled the troll before he heard it. Logan had spent 18 months teaching him to track by scent without making a thing of it, just expanding the information Harry was reading from any environment to include what his nose brought in, which the training had sharpened considerably. What was coming from the second-floor bathroom was enormous and pungent and wrong in the specific way of something that didn't belong in a stone corridor and knew it. He heard Hermione scream. Harry was already moving. The bathroom door came open under his shoulder without ceremony, and the troll was there, 12 feet of grey-green mass, clubbed the size of a small tree, and Hermione backed against the sinks in the far corner with no room to run and a face that had moved from frightened through terrified and arrived at the specific focused clarity of a person who decided that terror was a luxury they couldn't afford right now. The troll swung the club at the sinks. Stone exploded. Hermione dropped under the arc of it. Harry had his wand out and was doing 2 things simultaneously, assessing the target and deciding on approach, which took him about 1 second because the assessment was the approach. 12 feet, slow but massive, primary weapon was the club, limited reach on the upswing. The eyes were small for the head, vision probably narrow, tracking by sound and smell. Neville, left side, he said. Make noise. Make, what kind of, any kind. Neville threw a book at the wall to his left. Hard. The bang it made was satisfying. The troll's head swung toward it immediately, confirming the narrow field of vision. Harry stepped right and cast. Not a levitation charm, that had been the trick in the story he'd read about this encounter in the archives at the Montreal analyst's office, someone else's account of a similar situation. Lifting the club was the move that occurred to most people. Harry didn't lift the club. He hit the troll in the left knee with a knockback jinx amplified through a wand that had no ceiling on output, and the knee went sideways, and 12 feet of solid troll came down like a building being demolished, slow and catastrophic and extremely loud, hitting the bathroom floor hard enough to crack the tiles in a radius and send up a billow of stone dust. The club hit the far wall. Silence. Then Hermione coughing in the stone dust. Then Neville making a sound like a man who'd agreed to make noise and had not expected the consequences to include an earthquake. Are you hurt? Harry said, crossing to Hermione. She looked at him. Her robes were covered in dust and there was a cut on her forearm from flying stone, but she was standing and her eyes were tracking and she was breathing. No, she said. That is, the cut, but, she looked at the troll, which was sprawled across the bathroom floor making a noise like a foghorn in slow motion, not dead but profoundly discouraged. How did you, the knee, Harry said. Top heavy. Take the foundation and the rest follows. How did you know? Logan taught me structural thinking, Harry said. It applies to a lot of things. Hermione stared at him. Who is Logan? Later. Harry turned and looked at the troll, which was attempting to get its arms under itself with the motivated incompetence of something that had never tried to get up from this angle before. We should be here when the teachers arrive. We should have been upstairs, Hermione said, with the precision of someone who understood both things were true simultaneously. Yes, Harry agreed. Behind them, Neville had picked his book back up from where it had landed. I can't believe that worked, Neville said. I can, Harry said. Neville looked at him with the specific expression Harry had been cataloging for weeks, the expression Neville wore when he added something to the file of evidence he was quietly building about whether or not the world was going to be survivable. Another point for the survivable column. The teachers arrived 30 seconds later in a group, McGonagall, Snape, and Quirrell, and found 3 first-years standing in a rubble-strewn bathroom with a troll trying to lever itself upright in the corner, and the tableau held for a moment in which all 3 teachers processed what they were seeing in their different ways. McGonagall's expression went through several things rapidly and settled on composed relief. Snape looked at Harry with his particular quality of speculative intensity and then looked at the troll and then looked at the knockback jinx damage pattern on the floor. Quirrell looked at nothing directly. McGonagall gave them each 5 points and told them to go to their dormitory in a voice that was severe in the way voices are when the severity is covering something else. Harry went without argument. He understood what the 5 points were doing, he'd understood before she said them. Rewarding the result, not the method, because the method was not standard and was not something she wanted to encourage formally. He agreed with this logic, which was why he didn't argue. In the corridor, Hermione grabbed his arm. He stopped and looked at her, and she had the expression she wore when she'd made a decision. I told them, she said, that I went looking for the troll. That I thought I could handle it myself and I was wrong. Why? Harry said. Because you'd get in more trouble than me. She looked at him steadily. First years aren't supposed to know knockback jinxes. Harry looked at her for a moment. The mathematics of it were clear, she was right about the differential in consequence, and she'd done the calculation fast and chosen the version that protected both of them from scrutiny. Thank you, he said. Don't get used to it, she said, and let go of his arm and walked ahead. Neville fell into step beside Harry. She's frightening, Neville said, with admiration. Yes, Harry said. That's why she's useful. Is that the only reason you? No, Harry said. But it's one of them. He wrote to Logan that night. Troll in the castle. Halloween. Quirrell let it in. I'm not certain enough to commit that to writing as a fact, but it fits. Timing was too clean, the feint was staged, he was on his feet too quickly afterward. I also think Snape was following him. Not in the same direction. The other direction, Snape was watching Quirrell, not working with him. Question: if they're both interested in the same thing and Quirrell is moving on it, what is Snape's play? Protect the thing, or wait for Quirrell to move first? Everything's fine. Hermione and Neville are good. The wand performed exactly as you designed. The response came 3 days later. Hedwig dropped it at breakfast with the air of a bird who'd made impressive time and expected acknowledgement. Logan's handwriting, your read on Quirrell is probably right. Trust it. Snape, protection is more likely than competition. He's a Dumbledore man, whatever else he is. That means he wants whatever Quirrell wants for the other side. What does Quirrell want? Figure out the thing in the third-floor corridor and you'll have your answer. Below it, Logan, let me read this. I've now sent Fawkes 3 letters and 4 poems. The bird is a sophisticated literary audience. Also, troll with a knockback jinx, Harry, I'm printing this story on a t-shirt. Love, W. Harry folded the letter. Looked at Hermione across the table. She was eating toast and reading simultaneously, a skill she perfected to a degree that Logan would have appreciated. I need to tell you both something, Harry said. Hermione set down the toast. Neville, who'd been watching Harry read the letter with the anticipatory expression of someone who'd learned that Harry's letters often preceded interesting events, sat up. The third-floor corridor, Harry said. He told them the relevant facts without editorializing. The Gringotts vault number, the package, the corridor. What he'd heard and smelled through the door on his first reconnaissance and what it suggested. The pattern he was building around Quirrell. He gave them the full picture because they deserved the full picture, because the mistake, he'd decided, that most people in positions of advantage made was treating the people beside them as assets rather than partners, and he'd seen in Logan and Wade what it looked like when you didn't do that. Hermione listened with her full attention, not interrupting, asking 2 clarifying questions at precise moments. Neville listened with the focused anxiety of a man trying to decide whether he was frightened or not and concluding, gradually, that he wasn't quite. So something from Gringotts Vault 713 is being hidden on the 3rd floor, Hermione said, when he'd finished. Yes. And someone connected to whatever is in that corridor is also connected to the troll. Almost certainly. And you want to investigate it, she said. I want to understand it, Harry said. Because whatever it is, it's in the middle of where we live, and the people responsible for knowing about it are either complicit or being deceived, and I don't wait to be told when something's wrong by the people who might be wrong about it. Hermione looked at him. Then at Neville. Then back at Harry. Okay, she said. Okay, Neville said, a beat behind, with the expression of a man boarding a train that was already moving. November was the month Harry learned to fly. This wasn't strictly true, he'd had the physical mechanics of broomwork down from McGonagall's descriptions and the materials he'd read in Montreal, and the theory of magical flight was interesting rather than mysterious. What November gave him was the first time on an actual broom, and the actual experience of it was different from the theory in the way that every physical thing is different from the theory when the theory finally has a body in it. He was good. Immediately, naturally, the way he was good at most physical things Logan had trained him for, with the specific quality of someone whose spatial awareness and reaction time had been sharpened until they were tools, and who'd been taught to read movement and respond to it before thinking about responding, and who was, in his specific physical structure, exactly right for broomwork, light enough to be quick, strong enough to hold position, aware enough to read the air. He knew this within the first 30 seconds. He knew he was good the way he knew most things about himself, without performance, without false modesty, just the flat accurate assessment of a person who'd been taught to know themselves clearly. He clocked his speed and his response time and his instinct for the air currents above the pitch and filed all of it as useful. What he didn't expect was how much he liked it. He didn't perform this either. But somewhere inside the level assessment and the filed information there was something that wasn't information, something that lived in his chest when the ground dropped away and the castle came level with his eyes and the wind hit him in the face with the cold honest force of something completely indifferent to what he was supposed to be. Up here there was no scar. No prophecy. No Dumbledore watching from somewhere below. No story built around a boy who lived in a cupboard, or a boy who survived a curse, or a boy who was supposed to be the answer to someone else's question. Up here there was just this. Speed, and air, and the quaffle or the snitch depending on the day, and the castle in the distance and the lake below and the sky above going all the colors it had over Argyle. McGonagall watched his first session from the ground with her arms folded and her expression professionally neutral, and at the end of it she called him over. "You've flown before," she said. "No," Harry said. "You fly like someone with experience." "I've had good teachers in other things," Harry said. "It translates." McGonagall looked at him with the expression he'd learned to read as the one she wore when she was making a decision she'd already made. "I'd like you to consider the Gryffindor Quidditch team," she said. "I'm a first year," Harry said. "The rule is, I'm aware of the rule," McGonagall said. "I'm also aware that rules applied uniformly to non-uniform situations produce non-uniform results." She looked at the sky. "The seeker position has been empty since last year. Gryffindor needs a seeker. You have," she paused. "Ability." Harry looked at the sky. "Thought about it?" "Yes," he said. "Yes what?" "Yes, I'll do it." McGonagall nodded. Said nothing else. Turned and walked back toward the castle with the stride of a woman who'd got what she came for. Harry looked up at where the sky had been. He smiled, briefly, with no one watching. He wrote to Logan that evening, "They want me for Seeker." I said yes. Logan's reply, next morning, "How fast are you on the broom?" Harry, "Fast enough." Logan, "Don't show off." Harry, "Define showing off." Logan, "Don't crash." Harry, "I won't." A pause. Then, below Logan's handwriting, in Wade's, "Seeker." Harry the snitch-catching murder boy. "I'm getting a jersey made. What number do you want?" Logan is pretending he doesn't care and he has been smiling since he read your letter. "I have witnesses. The witness is me. I am the witness." The mirror appeared in December. Harry found it by accident, which was to say, he found it in the way that things find you when you've been moving through a space carefully enough and long enough that its unusual features begin to stand out. He'd been using the unused classrooms on the 4th floor for extended wand practice, the kind of extended, intensive work that the size of his magical output made inadvisable in the dormitory or common room, and the mirror was in a room 3 doors down from his usual practice space, behind a door that had been locked and wasn't anymore. He stood in the doorway and looked at it. It was enormous, floor to ceiling, gold-framed, with an inscription around the top that he read once and understood immediately, Eris stra eru oit ube kafru oit anwosi. He rearranged it without difficulty and stood with the result in his mind, "I show not your face but your heart's desire," for a moment. Then he stepped in front of it. The figure in the mirror was himself, clearly, the same face, same hair, same glasses. But different. Older, marginally, or perhaps just more settled. And on either side of him, rendered clearly enough that he felt the recognition in his chest before his mind had caught up with it, were Logan and Wade. Not exactly as they were in life. The mirror's version of them was softer, somehow. The lines in Logan's face less deep. Wade's mask gone, his face open in the way it was in those rare moments when the performance completely dropped. Both of them looking at the mirror Harry with an expression that Harry had seen in actuality but never quite fully registered until he saw it rendered here, outside himself, as a fact. He stood with this for a long moment. Then he took a deliberate step back. He understood what the mirror did. He understood the risk of it, the specific danger of a reflection of desire so accurate and so present that it became a substitute for the desire itself. He'd been taught about this, though not in any magical context. Logan had talked about it in a different language, the specific trap of the life you'd planned being more comfortable than the life you were in, the way it could stop you moving. He looked at the mirror once more. The figures in it were real. The people they represented were real. What he wanted was real. But they weren't in the mirror. They were in Argyle, and in letters that arrived with Hedwig, and in the wand warm against his arm. He didn't need a mirror to know what he wanted. He knew what he wanted. He was building it. He turned and walked out of the room. He didn't go back. He told Dumbledore about it. This was deliberate. He'd been waiting for the right occasion to speak to Dumbledore directly, not avoiding it, waiting for a context in which the conversation would be his rather than the headmaster's. The mirror was the right occasion. Dumbledore's office was circular and warm and full of things that moved and watched, and Fawkes was on his perch in the corner, and when Harry came in the Phoenix turned one bright eye toward him with the specific attention of an animal recognizing something it knew. Harry thought about Wade's letters to the bird and almost smiled. Dumbledore rose from behind his desk with the warmth of a man who'd been wanting this meeting for months and was too composed to show it completely. "Harry," he said. "Do sit down." Harry sat. "I found the mirror," Harry said, without preamble. "The one on the 4th floor. Erased." Dumbledore's composure held. But his eyes, very blue, very sharp behind the half-moon glasses, adjusted. "Did you?" he said. "I looked into it," Harry said. "I understood what it was. I left." A pause. "Most people," Dumbledore said carefully, "find it compelling to return to." "I can see why," Harry said. "It's very accurate." He looked at Dumbledore directly. "But what I want isn't in the mirror. It's real." "So the mirror is just a mirror?" Dumbledore looked at him for a long moment. Harry let him look. He was reading Dumbledore the same way he read every room, exits, topology, what the configuration of authority revealed about its center. What he read in Dumbledore was this: a man of genuine intelligence and genuine warmth and genuine conviction, who had also been in charge of things for so long that the distance between his judgment and other people's reality had closed without him noticing. A man who loved the greater good so specifically that individual goods had become, over time, a little blurred. He also read, surprise. Calibrated behind composure, but there. The surprise of someone encountering a piece that wasn't where the board said it should be. "You're not what I expected," Dumbledore said. "I know," Harry said. "Who taught you?" Dumbledore asked. "Not the surface version, not who taught you magic. The deeper version. People who cared about who I actually was," Harry said. "Rather than who I was supposed to be." Dumbledore received this without showing what he did with it. He was very good. Harry gave him that. "The mirror will be moved," Dumbledore said. "To somewhere safer." "I thought it might be," Harry said. A silence. "Is there anything you'd like to ask me?" Dumbledore said, and there was something in the offer, something that was genuinely open, whatever else was underneath it. Harry thought about Vault 713. About Quirrell. About the three-headed dog he'd confirmed was behind the third-floor door on his second reconnaissance in November. About the logical sequence of things, and where it was going, and how fast. "Not yet," Harry said. He stood. Looked at Fawkes. The Phoenix looked back at him with that one bright eye. "He's beautiful," Harry said. "He is," Dumbledore agreed, and something in his voice was less composed than everything else had been. Something that might have been the actual man rather than the position. Harry left without pressing it. In the corridor outside, he stood for a moment and let the conversation settle, running it back, accounting for every exchange, logging what he'd learned and what Dumbledore had learned about him. The balance felt right. He'd given Dumbledore the mirror, his honesty about it, his understanding of it, and taken in return the confirmation that the older man was surprised, which told him that his growth over 3 years had occurred outside Dumbledore's models of what should be possible. That was useful. He went to find Hermione and Neville and tell them what the 3-floor corridor contained. The Quidditch match against Slytherin on the last weekend before Christmas nearly went wrong. Not on the pitch. On the pitch Harry was in the air and the snitch was out there somewhere in the grey December sky, and the game was good, the way anything was good when it required all of him. What nearly went wrong was in the stands. Harry caught the snitch in his first match in 7 minutes flat, not showing off, simply seeing it and going to where it was going to be rather than where it was, the same spatial logic he used in training, and it was in his hand before the Slytherin seeker was close, and when he landed and the stadium exploded, he looked toward the Gryffindor stands and then his broom lurched. Not from wind. From something else. He felt it in the wand against his arm before he felt it through the broom, the wand running warm, specifically warm, the warmth that he'd learned over 3 years to read as the wand doing something in response to something else. It was absorbing something. Someone was jinxing his broom. He stayed on it. The lurching was controllable, barely, and only because he was who he was, because 3 years of Logan's training had given him a body that responded without consulting thought. He kept his seat, kept his hands steady, and used the 10 seconds it took Hermione to identify the source and counter it to find the source himself. His eyes went to the stands. Moving through the crowd, reading faces, reading directions, reading who was still and who was performing stillness. Snape. Eyes fixed on him. Lips moving. Harry's wand warmed again, another absorption, and then stilled. The broom steadied. Whatever Hermione had done, it had worked. He landed to a standing ovation and walked off the pitch with the snitch in his hand and went directly to find Hermione and Neville, because he needed to tell them something and he needed to say it before he thought too long about it. Snape was jinxing my broom, he said. We know, Hermione said. I set his robes on fire. Harry stopped. I knocked into Quirrell accidentally, she said, with the serenity of a person for whom the moral accounting was very clear. Which broke Snape's concentration. His robes also briefly caught. You're frightening, Neville said. Thank you, Hermione said. Harry looked at the snitch in his hand. Then he looked at where the staff box was, empty now, the teachers filing back toward the castle. It wasn't malicious, Harry said. He'd been thinking about this for the 7 minutes he'd been in the air and the 2 minutes since landing, running it against Logan's framework. Snape wasn't trying to kill me. He was, demonstrating something. Testing something. Testing what? Neville said. Whether I could hold on, Harry said. And whether whatever I'm using to hold on is what he thinks it is. He looked at his sleeve. He knows the wand is unusual. He's been looking at it since potions. He wants to know what it does. He won't find out by jinxing you off a broomstick, Hermione said. No, Harry said. That's not why he was doing it. He was watching how the wand responded. He paused. He's smart. I've been underestimating how much he's putting together. What does that mean? Neville said. It means I should probably have a conversation with him, Harry said. That sounds terrible, Neville said. It sounds necessary, Harry said. Hermione nodded. The calculation in her face was the same one he'd made, Snape as an unknown quantity, but not necessarily an opposed one. Snape watching Quirrell. Snape jinxing Harry's broom in a way that didn't try to kill him. Snape in the 3rd-floor corridor that night in October when the troll came in, coming from the wrong direction with a leg injury that Harry hadn't been close enough to see clearly but that Hermione had confirmed in the infirmary rumor cycle. Snape had been bitten. By something large. The dog, Harry said. He went to the 3rd floor himself, Hermione said. Before or after Quirrell? He got past the dog. But he didn't take what's there, Harry said. Because whatever it is, it's still there. So he's guarding it, Neville said. Not from us. From Quirrell. From whoever Quirrell is working for, Harry said. They stood in the cold outside the pitch with their breath-making clouds, the castle at their backs and the lake grey and still before them, and the whole shape of it was becoming visible now, the way a picture becomes visible when enough pieces of it are placed. We should talk to Snape, Hermione said. I should talk to Snape, Harry said. Just me. He's more likely to engage one-on-one. Group conversations give him an audience to perform for. When? She said. After Christmas, Harry said. When everyone's back and the pace picks up again. I want to watch him through January before I approach. He looked at the castle. And I want to know more about what's in that corridor before I know less than him going into a conversation. Hermione and Neville looked at each other with the specific expression of two people confirming something they'd each already concluded. You've already been in the corridor again, Hermione said. Yes, Harry said. How many times? 3. Harry, I know, he said. I've been careful. I needed to know what I'm working with. And? Neville said. Harry looked at the castle. The dog is called a Cerberus, he said. 3 heads, each of which is an independent sensory system, smell, sound, movement. Music puts it to sleep. Past it there's a trapdoor, and below the trapdoor there are at least 6 more layers of protection. I've mapped what I could from above without going through. Devil's Snare, I think, based on the smell coming up. Something with keys. Something with chess. He paused. And at the end of it, something worth protecting with all of that. The silence held. The stone, Hermione said, quietly. Harry looked at her. Philosopher's Stone, she said. Nicholas Flamel. I've been cross-referencing the Gringotts news from last summer. There was a break-in at Vault 713 in August. The same vault. And Flamel is the only known maker of a Philosopher's Stone, and he's connected to Dumbledore, and a Philosopher's Stone would give immortality, Harry said. Yes. To whoever wanted it, Neville said. Including, yes, Harry said. The loch was grey and still and the castle was where it had been for 1,000 years and the sky above it was the December sky, low and cold and indifferent to prophecy, and the 3 of them stood at the center of something that was going to require them. After Christmas, Harry said. They both nodded. Go inside, he said. It's cold. They went. Harry stood a moment longer, his hand on the wand through his sleeve, feeling the steady warmth of it. He thought about a man with a turban and a stutter that disappeared when he thought no one was paying attention. He thought about something old and damaged and desperate, trying to get back into the world through any door it could find. He thought about Logan, finish them. He put the snitch in his pocket and went inside. He was ready. Chapter 5, The Stone and the Fire. January and February went fast the way months go fast when they're full, classes and training and the slow methodical accumulation of everything Harry needed to know before he moved, which was how Logan had taught him to approach any operation, and which Hermione had independently arrived at through her own methodology, and which Neville had accepted on faith and then started practicing on his own terms. Neville's terms were different from Harry's and Hermione's, and that was the point. He'd started meeting Harry on the grounds in the early mornings, before breakfast, in the cold January dark when the castle was still mostly asleep. Not because Harry had asked him to. Because Neville had decided, somewhere in the accumulation of everything since September, that he was tired of waiting to see if he was the kind of person who could do things and had decided to find out directly. Harry didn't comment on this. He just made room for him. They ran the grounds in the dark, and Harry showed him the things that Logan had shown Harry, how to fall, how to be still, how to read the space around him rather than just the space in front of him. Neville was not a natural athlete. He was slow and clumsy at first and fell frequently and got back up every time with the specific quality of someone who decided that getting up was the one non-negotiable. Harry respected this completely. By February, Neville could hold his wand without telegraphing the movement first. By March, he could disarm someone faster than any other first year in the class. His gran sent him a letter that said she'd heard from McGonagall and was pleased, and Neville read it 3 times and then folded it very carefully and put it in his chest pocket and didn't talk about it, and Harry understood that and said nothing. Hermione, in January, broke into the restricted section of the library. Not broke in, technically she had a permission slip from Flitwick for adjacent materials, and technically the restricted section was adjacent, and the fact that Flitwick's slip did not specifically authorize the restricted section was a technicality that Hermione had decided the greater good could absorb. She came back with 3 books on Nicholas Flamel and a 4th on the history of immortality research, and she spread them on the table in their usual corner of the library and read them with the focused intensity of someone solving a problem that had been personally offensive to her since October. Flamel is 665 years old, she said, on a Tuesday in late January, without looking up from the page. How? Neville said. The stone makes an elixir of life. You drink it, you don't die. But, she turned the page. You have to keep making it. Keep drinking it. It's not permanent immortality. It's continuous. You stop drinking, the extended life catches up with you. So whoever takes the stone, Harry said, doesn't automatically live forever. They have to make the elixir first. And keep making it, Hermione said. Which requires the stone. Which is, she looked at him. Which is why they need it specifically, Harry said. Not just generally. Not just for power. They need it because they're dying. The silence that followed had a different quality than their usual working silences. He's not fully dead, Neville said, carefully. This was not a question. They'd been building toward this conclusion for months. No, Harry said. Not fully. Some form of continued existence without a body. He's been trying to get back. The back of Quirrell's head, he stopped, because he'd gotten close enough in the corridors to notice, and hadn't said it yet. The turban, he said. He wears it all year. He never takes it off. I smelled something wrong in the defense classroom the first week. Old blood and something else. Something that doesn't fit in a room with living people. Hermione had gone very still. You think Voldemort is on the back of Quirrell's head, she said. Yes, Harry said. The word sat in the air. Hermione had been one of 3 people in the school who said the name without flinching, which was one of the things Harry respected about her. She said it now with the flatness of a woman incorporating a very strange fact into her framework and moving on. Then when Quirrell goes for the stone, she said. We'll know, Harry said. Because he won't be able to wait much longer. The end of the year is coming. Flamel's supply of elixir won't last forever, and whatever's been maintaining Voldemort in that, he gestured briefly toward his own head. That condition has limits. He'll move before the school year ends. Do we tell Dumbledore? Neville said. Harry and Hermione looked at each other. Not yet, Harry said. Not because I don't trust him with the information, he already knows most of it. But because telling Dumbledore gives him the move. He'll put pieces in place to manage it, and then we're inside his management of it, and I don't know yet that his management is what the situation needs. What does the situation need? Neville said. Someone who can actually stop Quirrell when he moves, Harry said. Rather than someone who gets there after. Neville sat with this for a moment. Then, carefully, you're planning to go through the trapdoor. When the time comes, Harry said. Not when Dumbledore decides the time has come, Neville said. When you decide. When the situation decides, Harry said. I'll know when it's time. How? Hermione said. Harry looked at his sleeve. The wand will. He was right, as it turned out. Though the wand wasn't the only signal. It was a Thursday in June, with exams recently finished and the school year winding down into its last soft weeks, and Harry was on the grounds with Neville doing the morning run when Hedwig found him. She came from the west, not from the Ollery, which meant she'd flown directly from Argyle overnight, and she dropped Logan's letter on his shoulder and landed on his arm with the focused urgency of a bird who understood the contents. Harry opened it while still walking. Hermione's right about the timing. Ministry has had unusual magical disturbance readings from the Hogwarts corridor since last week, not enough for them to act on, but enough to log. Someone's been probing the protections. Testing the layers. HYDRA contact in London says there's been movement from a connected cell, someone acquiring unusual ingredients. Items that would stabilize a partial corporeal form temporarily. Enough to function. Enough to act. It's moving. Probably within the week. We're coming to Scotland. We won't come to the school unless you need us. But we'll be close. Harry. Whatever happens. You know what to do. You've always known what to do. Trust the wand. Trust your friends. Trust yourself. Don't be afraid of him. Harry folded the letter. Neville was reading his face. When? Neville said. Soon, Harry said. Few days. Maybe less. He looked at the castle. We need to talk to Hermione. They found her at breakfast, and Harry put Logan's letter on the table in front of her without a word, and she read it with the focused speed she brought to everything and then looked up. Okay, she said. We watch Quirrell today, Harry said. When he moves, we move. All three of us, Neville said. Not a question. All three, Harry said. Neville nodded. He picked up his toast with the composure of a man who'd decided something and was done deciding. They watched Quirrell all day. He taught his afternoon class with less of his usual managed twitchiness, calmer, if anything, which was worse, the specific calm of someone who'd made a decision and was waiting for the right moment rather than managing the anxiety of uncertainty. At dinner he ate nothing. Harry watched this from across the hall with the patience Logan had spent a year drilling into him, the patience of knowing when not to act and holding to it without fidgeting. After dinner he went to see Hagrid. Not to gather information, he already had what Hagrid could tell him. He went because Hagrid was kind and straightforward and talking to him felt like talking to someone who meant what he said, which was rarer than it should have been. And because there was something Hagrid had mentioned months ago about the dog, Fluffy, Hagrid called it, which was both alarming and somehow fitting, something about music, and where the music came from. How'd you know about Fluffy's weakness? Harry said, sitting in the warmth of the hut while Hagrid made tea. Hagrid's enormous face shifted. Well, the person who told me, I shouldn't, he stopped. Why were you asking, Harry? You haven't been, Hagrid, Harry said. Someone told you music puts it to sleep. Who told you that? The silence was enough. The stranger in the pub, Harry said. With the hood. Hagrid's face confirmed it without words, the specific widening of eyes followed by the closing down of expression that happened when someone realized they'd been played. He bought you a drink, Harry said. Not accusatory. Gently. Putting it together aloud. You talked about Fluffy because you were proud of him, because he's remarkable, and the stranger asked the right questions. You didn't know. I never thought, Hagrid began. You couldn't have known, Harry said. You're not supposed to be the last line of defense against someone like that. None of this should have been in the school in the first place. He put his hand briefly on Hagrid's arm. It's not your fault. Hagrid's eyes were very bright. You're not going down there, he said. Harry, tell me you're not. I'm not going to do anything stupid, Harry said. That's not the same as not going, Hagrid said. No, Harry said honestly. It's not. He went back to the castle. That night, at just past midnight, Quirrell moved. Harry felt it before he heard it, the wand flaring warm against his arm, not in the absorption pattern that meant incoming magic, but in a different register entirely, something more like a compass finding north. He'd felt it twice before, briefly, and understood what it was, the wand responding to the presence of something actively hostile at range. He was awake and sitting up before Neville, in the next bed, had finished processing the same instinct from a different source. Now. Neville said. Now, Harry said. They got Hermione in the corridor. She was already dressed. I heard Quirrell's door, she said. How long ago? 2 minutes. He'll be at the 3rd floor already, Harry said. We move. They moved. The castle at midnight had its own quality, not dark exactly, lit by moonlight through tall windows and the residual warmth of torches down to embers, and the staircases still and the portraits mostly sleeping. Harry led them through the route he'd mapped in the first weeks of term, the upper corridor route that bypassed the main stairs and came out near the 3rd floor entrance in under 4 minutes. The door to the corridor was open. Not forced. Opened by someone who knew how to open it, which confirmed everything. The 3 of them stopped just outside it. Same as everything, Harry said. Show up, Neville said. Deal with what's there. Don't panic, Hermione added. Harry looked at them both. The moonlight from the window at the end of the corridor lit them clearly, Hermione with her wand drawn and her jaw set with the resolution of someone who decided the calculation came out on the right side, Neville with his wand in his hand and his shoulders squared, not the flinching Neville of September, not the apologetic quietly anxious Neville who'd knocked on a train compartment door with a toad, but someone who'd been running in the dark at 6 in the morning for 5 months and knew what his body could do. Let's go, Harry said. Through the door, through the corridor, and the dog, Fluffy, was already unconscious, slumped across the trapdoor with its 3 heads soft in sleep and a harp in the corner still running the last notes of a charmed melody Quirrell had clearly set before he went through. Harry moved the trapdoor. They dropped through. Devil's Snare was first. It came up in the dark immediately, tendrils finding the warmth of living things the way it was built to do, wrapping with the specific patient efficiency of a plant that had no malice and no mercy because it had no mind, just appetite. Hermione lit her wand and produced a controlled burst of bright clear flame, not a spell Harry had seen her use before, and he filed this as new information and kept his own wand ready while she moved the light systematically until the snare retreated. They dropped into the room below. Keys next. A massive chamber full of winged keys circling in the dark, hundreds of them, and a locked door, and broomsticks. Harry had the door's lock assessed in 2 seconds, older model, the keyhole shape distinctive, and was on a broom in 3, in the air in 4, reading the pattern of the keys above him the way he read the pattern of a snitch during a match. He found it in 40 seconds. Old lock, older key, the one that was slightly more battered than the others, that moved with the specific reluctance of something used recently. He caught it on the move and hit the door lock without stopping, flying back to the floor in a single clean arc. The door opened. That was, Neville started. Chess next, Harry said. I read about the protections. McGonagall's contribution. The chess room was enormous. Wizard's chess, life-sized, the pieces made of stone and armed with real weapons, the board across the full width of the chamber. A set of empty pieces waiting at one end for players. Harry looked at the board. Looked at the configuration of the pieces already on it, Quirrell's game in mid-progress, the path he'd taken through it. The board was reset, the pieces had returned when Quirrell passed, the protections self-restoring. I can play, Neville said. Harry and Hermione looked at him. Gran taught me, Neville said. Since I was 5. She's very serious about chess. Something in his face was very still. I can see the board. Let me. Harry looked at the board. He could play chess, he'd learned because Logan played, badly, and Wade played brilliantly and irritatingly, but he could see immediately that Neville's read of the configuration was faster and more instinctive than his. Okay, Harry said. What do we need? You're a bishop, Neville said, already moving to take his piece. Hermione, you're a castle. I'll take the knight. He looked at the board with focused calm. I can get you both to the other side in 7 moves. But the knight, he stopped. What about the knight? Hermione said. The knight has to take the queen, Neville said. And the queen, he looked at the piece. 45 kilograms of stone with a stone sword. She hits back. Neville, Hermione started. I know, Neville said. He looked at her, then at Harry, with an expression that was complete and uncomplicated and utterly itself. 7 moves. Start on my signal. You don't have to, Harry began. I know, Neville said again. That's the point. He took the knight. The game played out across 7 moves with the clean logic of a plan followed precisely, Neville calling moves in a voice that was level and clear, Harry and Hermione taking their pieces to positions that opened the board the way Neville could see it. The stone pieces moved and clashed and the sound of it echoed off the chamber walls, enormous and sharp. On the 7th move, Neville rode the knight into the center of the board and the White Queen came at him with the stone sword and hit the horse out from under him and he went down hard onto the chessboard and the knight piece cracked and the Queen stopped, satisfied, and the path to the door was open. Harry was off his bishop piece and across the board in seconds. Neville was sitting up, bleeding from a cut on his head where the stone floor had met his temple. Conscious. Focusing with visible effort. Go, Neville said. I'm fine. I'm staying here. Go. He looked at Harry with complete clarity through the blood tracking down from his temple. End it. Harry held his gaze for 1 second. I'll come back the same way, he said. I know, Neville said. Harry went through the door. Behind him he heard Hermione say something to Neville in a voice too low to catch, and Neville's quieter response, and then her footsteps behind him. The next room was Snape's. A logic puzzle, potions arrayed on a table, a riddle on a parchment, fire across both exits. Hermione read the riddle in 90 seconds and had the solution in 2 minutes and handed Harry the correct bottle with the matter-of-fact efficiency of someone who'd been preparing for this specific competency her whole life. 1 dose, she said. It's cold. It'll let you through the black fire. You should go back, Harry said. Help Neville. Hermione looked at him. Then at the purple fire blocking the way back, the black fire blocking the way forward. She looked at the arrangement with the complete honesty of a person doing real accounting. There's only enough potion for one to go forward, she said. And the purple fire doesn't need anything, it'll die down. She looked at Harry directly. I'll go back to Neville. I'll send an owl to Logan. Logan's already in Scotland, Harry said. Hermione's eyebrows went up briefly. He said he'd be close, Harry said. He'll come if you send Hedwig from the Ollery. Tell him I've gone through. He'll come regardless, Hermione said. Yes, Harry said. But tell him anyway. She took his hand briefly. Not a dramatic gesture, a specific one, the gesture of someone who didn't do things without meaning them. Come back, she said. Planning on it, Harry said. He drank the potion. It was cold all the way through him, the specific cold of something designed for a singular purpose, and he walked into the black fire and it didn't burn. The last room was lit by purple flames and brackets along the stone walls, and at its center was a mirror. The mirror of Ariste, moved from the 4th floor, standing in the chamber with its inscription still running along the top. And in front of it, Quirrell. He didn't have the stutter now. Harry had expected this. What he hadn't expected was the quiet. Quirrell stood with his back to the mirror and his wand at his side and he turned when Harry came through the fire with the composure of a man who'd been waiting and was prepared for what the waiting had produced. He was young. That was the first thing Harry registered clearly, younger than he'd read him, younger than the nervous professor performance suggested. Not old and hollowed like Harry had imagined someone living this kind of double life. Young and very tired and carrying something in his eyes that Harry read immediately and filed, not evil, as a simplified category. Something worse than simple evil. True belief. The specific exhausted conviction of someone who'd committed completely to a cause and was past the point of returning from it. Harry Potter, Quirrell said. Quirrell, Harry said. You shouldn't be here. I'm here though, Harry said. Quirrell's expression didn't change. You're 11 years old. Yes, Harry said. Are you planning on using that? Something moved in Quirrell's face. He'd expected frightened, Harry understood. Or at minimum hesitant. The psychological architecture of the confrontation, the full-grown wizard, the ancient dark power on his back, the 11-year-old who'd somehow come through 6 layers of protection, had been built by someone who expected the weight of it to slow Harry down. It didn't. The stone is in the mirror, Quirrell said. I've been trying to understand the charm. It shows me, his jaw tightened. It shows me what I want. A man presenting his master with the stone. But I cannot reach it. Because wanting to use it is the wrong want, Harry said. Quirrell looked at him. Dumbledore built it so only someone who wants to find the stone, not use it, can get it out, Harry said. He'd worked this out in November, running the logic of the mirror's mechanism against everything he knew about Dumbledore's particular brand of layered protection. You want to give it to Voldemort. That's using it. The mirror knows the difference. The name hit the room like a stone hitting water, not in Harry, but in Quirrell, a visible ripple of something complicated that might have been reverence and might have been fear and was probably, Harry thought, both. You say his name, Quirrell said. He's a person, Harry said. Calling him something else doesn't change what he is. He's here, Harry said. I know. The back of your head. The silence that followed was different from the silences before it. Heavier. How long have you known? Quirrell said. Since October, Harry said. Quirrell looked at him with an expression that was trying to find the angle and failing. You've known for 8 months and said nothing. I was gathering information, Harry said. Quirrell stopped. Something shifted in his posture. His wand came up, not threateningly, but with the quality of a man falling back on what he had when the conversation had gone somewhere he hadn't prepared for. Use the mirror, he said. Get me the stone. No, Harry said. Simple. Final. The tone Logan used when the conversation was over and action was what came next. Quirrell's wand arm stiffened. Then the other voice came. It came from behind Quirrell's head, from where the turban concealed the back of his skull, and it was nothing like Harry had imagined, which surprised him even now. He'd expected something enormous and theatrical. What came instead was quiet. Almost soft. A voice that had spent a very long time being reduced and was using what remained with absolute precision. Turn around, the voice said. Let me see the boy. Quirrell turned. The face on the back of his skull was not the face Harry had seen in any recounting or description, not the reconstructed handsome face of Tom Riddle, not the no-nose no-hair horror of the fully returned Voldemort that lived in the research records. This was something between, something partial, a face assembled from what was available with the specific quality of something that had survived by compressing itself to the essential. The eyes were red. That part was true. They looked at Harry with an intelligence that was full and immediate, and Harry looked back without looking away. You are not what I expected, Voldemort said. I get that a lot, Harry said. You have no fear. Not accusatory. Genuinely observing. I have fear, Harry said. Just not of you specifically. You should. Still soft. I killed your parents. I know, Harry said. I've known since I was 8. And I've had 3 years to decide what to do about it, Harry said. I decided to get better. At everything. So that when this conversation happened, I'd be ready for it and you wouldn't. The red eyes studied him. The wand, Voldemort said. Something in the voice shifted, something that was recognition rather than observation. I can feel it from here. That is not a standard construction. No, Harry said. Adamantium, Voldemort said. And something alive. Something, a pause. Something that heals. Yes, Harry said. Extraordinary. A silence. Who made it for you? Someone who gives a damn, Harry said. The red eyes moved across him with the specific quality of a mind that had survived by being right about things, encountering something it hadn't been right about. I could make you an offer, Voldemort said. The voice was absolutely calm. Not charming, past charm, past the manipulations of Tom Riddle's school days. This was something that had been in a partial state for 10 years and was speaking with the focus of everything that had survived that. I know what you have. I know what you are. The power in you is, I know what it is, Harry said. You can't offer me anything about myself I don't already have. Power, Voldemort said. A proper mentor. Knowledge of, Voldemort, Harry said. I have two people who actually showed up for me. The power is already mine. And the knowledge, he touched his sleeve. I went to school. I'm fine. Another silence. Longer. Then, kill him. Quirrell moved. He moved fast, faster than he'd shown in a year of defense classes, faster than any teacher Harry had assessed, the specific practice speed of someone who'd been trained by something that had once been among the most powerful wizards alive. His wand arm came up and the spell that came off it was not a curse Harry had a name for, something purple and sharp that took the room like a sound wave. Harry was already not where he'd been standing. He moved left, Logan's lesson, the oldest one, never stand where they expect you to be, and the spell took the stone floor where he'd been and left a mark in it. He had his wand out and cast in the same motion he'd been practicing for 3 years, not the spell the situation suggested but the spell the situation required, which were different things and the difference was the whole point. Quirrell's wand hand locked. Not a disarming charm, Harry had used a targeted binding jinx aimed at the specific joint, the way you'd stop a hand rather than taking the whole weapon, and Quirrell's fingers went rigid and the wand dropped. Quirrell lunged forward without the wand. Harry's wand absorbed the first physical strike, the wand running hot the moment Quirrell's hand connected, the healing factor in it absorbing the intent of the blow, and something else happened that Harry hadn't fully predicted. The contact between Quirrell's hand and the wand ran backward, not through the wand but through the air between them, something in the magical circuit completing itself in a direction that Harry had theorized but never tested. His blood in the wand. His survival in the wand. The same whatever it was that had made a killing curse bounce off a 1-year-old and leave a piece of itself in the caster. Quirrell's hand where it touched the wand began to smoke. Quirrell screamed, not in pain, or not only in pain, but in the specific register of someone whose body was doing something they hadn't consented to, and pulled back, and Harry saw the hand. The palm was not burned in the way fire burns. It was, dissolving, at the contact point, the skin going gray and granular in a circle the diameter of the wand, and spreading. Harry stepped back. What? Voldemort's voice came off Quirrell's back with the first genuine emotion Harry had heard in it. Not anger. Not calculation. Something raw. What is in that wand? My blood, Harry said. And the thing that bounced your curse back 10 years ago. Lily's protection, Voldemort said. And for just a moment the calculation was entirely gone, and what looked through the red eyes was something that might have been old and genuine and human before everything else happened to it. Then it was gone. You can't hold that forever, Voldemort said, and Quirrell came forward again, and the thing that happened next was not something Harry had planned but something the situation required, and the difference between those two things was his 3 years of training running exactly as Logan had built it. He grabbed Quirrell's robe. Both hands. The wand pressed between his palm and the cloth, and the contact that had started on Quirrell's hand spread faster through the direct connection, and Quirrell convulsed and screamed and the grey dissolution accelerated, and Harry held on because the alternative was letting go, and Logan had taught him that letting go in the middle of something was how you lost it. He held on until Quirrell stopped moving. He let go and stepped back, and Quirrell was on the floor, and the gray dissolution was accelerating across his skin, the link between the body and the thing inhabiting it severing in a way that produced a sound not like anything Harry had a reference for. A tearing sound. A release. The face on the back of Quirrell's head was already going. The red eyes found Harry's for the last moment before they did. "Next time," Voldemort said, and the voice had lost everything by now except the fact of itself. "There won't be a next time," Harry said. "There is always a next time." Then the eyes were gone, and Quirrell was still, and the room smelled of dust, and the purple flames in the brackets along the walls went out one by one, leaving Harry alone in the dark with the mirror and what had been Quirrell and the specific silence of something that had ended. He stood still for a moment. Not frozen, still in the way Logan had shown him on the hillside in Argyle, the way a body holds itself when it's done what it came to do and is assessing what comes next. He looked at his hands. They were completely steady. He looked at the mirror. The figure in it was just him this time. No one else. Just Harry, in a dark room, looking at himself. He looked for a moment. Then he stepped in front of the mirror and looked into it directly, and said to his own reflection, quietly, "I know." Then he turned to the mirror's base. He could feel it before he found it, the wand warming in the specific pattern of something living nearby, the phoenix feather in its core resonating with the compressed magic of the Philosopher's Stone the way two tuning forks resonate when they share a frequency. He reached into the mirror's base and the stone was in his hand, small, blood-red, warm, almost impossibly dense for its size. He put it in his pocket. He looked at the door behind him. Then he walked back through the black fire, which still didn't burn. Hermione had sent Hedwig. He knew this before he reached the chess room because Logan was already there. He'd come through the corridor by some method that Harry didn't ask about and suspected involved significant property damage to a castle door, and he was crouching by Neville when Harry came through, his hand on Neville's shoulder and his eyes on Harry. Harry stopped. They looked at each other. Logan's jaw was doing the thing Wade called the extra thing, and his hands, which Harry had never seen fully still, were very still. Harry read all of this in 1 second and then crossed the room, and Logan stood and Harry walked into him and Logan's arm went around him and held on, and Harry let himself be held for exactly as long as he needed, which was longer than he usually allowed himself things. "Quirrell's done," Harry said, into Logan's shoulder. "I know," Logan said. His voice was very level. "Are you hurt?" "No." "You're sure?" "I'm sure." A pause. "Good," Logan said. He let go. Stepped back. Looked at Harry with the full accounting look, not the check for injuries, the other check, the one that read something beneath physical. "Yeah," he said, to whatever he found. "Yeah," Harry agreed. Wade came through the corridor door behind Logan. He'd apparently been the one clearing the chess pieces, which explained the sounds Harry had been hearing for the last 2 minutes, and stopped when he saw Harry. "Hey kid," Wade said. "Hey," Harry said. Wade crossed the room in 2 strides and wrapped both arms around Harry with the grip that he used when something mattered, and Harry laughed, actually laughed, the real one, the one that lived in his chest, and hugged him back. "The stone?" Wade said, against the top of Harry's head. "Pocket," Harry said. "Logan," Wade said. "I heard," Logan said. "What do we give it to McGonagall," Harry said, pulling back. "And we let the school handle what happens after." He looked between them. "It's not ours to decide what Flamel does with it. It's just ours to make sure Voldemort doesn't get it." Logan looked at him. "We completed the objective," Harry said. Logan nodded. Slowly. Neville, from the floor where he was sitting with a cloth against his head, said, "Hermione's going to be insufferable about being right." "She was right," Harry said. "I know," Neville said. "That's what I mean." Harry looked at him and grinned, and Neville grinned back through the dried blood on his face, and Wade made a noise above them that was categorically not the sound a person makes when they're not crying. Allergies, Wade said. Still the Highlands, Logan said. Aggressive allergies, Logan, I've said this, let's go, Harry said. They went.